Good morning, everybody. So welcome, everyone, to the Canadian Council of the Blind 2025 Vision Health Month Conference. Together we thrive, breaking barriers, building bridges. My name is Leslie Yee, and I am the first Vice President of Canadian Council of the Blind, and I am thrilled to be your MC for the day. So let us start off with a land acknowledgement. As we are here in Ottawa, we acknowledge that Ottawa is built on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabeg Algonquin people. We honored their stewardship of this land since time immemorial and recognize their ongoing contributions to this region. As we all gather here today, we commit to working together in a spirit of openness and warmth, sharing ideas, fostering understanding, and building relationships rooted in respect and collaboration. So to start us off, I would like to invite Jim Tokos, President of Canadian Council of the Blind, to give us a welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Canadian Council of the Blind, it gives me great honor to welcome everyone to our annual May Vision 2025 celebration event. I would like to thank the organizing committee and our wonderful speakers for joining us at our event, and we look forward to all the wonderful information sharing that we will have today. Again, thank you, and please enjoy your day, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Jim. So it's great to see so many people here today. Thank you all for coming. Our theme today is Together We Thrive, Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges. So I'd just like to open up by talking a little bit about why inclusion and community support matter. I am a person living with vision loss, and it can often feel isolating and scary at times, but true inclusion in society transforms that experience into one of belonging. When communities prioritize accessibility, it's not just about ramps and braille, it's about attitude, awareness, and meaningful engagement. Social inclusion means being seen beyond disability, being valued for one's skills and contributions, and having the confidence that support systems exist to navigate the world independently. Whether through workplace accommodations, accessible public spaces, or simply a culture that fosters understanding, inclusion empowers individuals with vision loss to thrive rather than to just get by. Community support plays an equally vital role in shaping that sense of independence. Having a network, whether family, friends, peers, or advocacy groups, ensures the challenges aren't faced alone. From navigating transportation to enjoying cultural events, the presence of a supportive community makes all the difference. Encouragement, assistance, and shared experiences to dissolve barriers that might otherwise hinder participation in everyday life. When communities work together to build an inclusive environment, they don't just help those with vision loss, they enrich the social fabric for everyone. So today we have some wonderful keynote speakers. Our first speaker this morning is Wayne Antle. Wayne has been totally blind since 2011, following a lifetime of severe visual impairment. He retired in 2016 after a 32-year career with the Canada Revenue Agency, where he served as a director in the appeals branch. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce from Memorial University of Newfoundland and is a chartered professional accountant. His recognitions include the Queen's Golden Jubilee Award and the CRA Award of Excellence for Employment, Equity, and Diversity. Wayne is the past president of the Ottawa-Gatineau chapter of the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians and currently serves on several AEBC committees. He also leads a Mac users group with the CCB's Get Together with Technology program. So let's welcome Wayne.
Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to have the opportunity to speak with you today at this Vision Health conference. So why is a person who lost all their vision talking to you about vision health? Because certainly detecting, preventing, and treating eye diseases and disorders is very important. But vision health is broader than that. It also deals with how someone who is facing unavoidable vision loss, despite all the treatments, can adjust to their new reality and lead a full, enriching, independent life, continuing to do all that they want to do, both for work and play. So certainly one aspect of adjusting to vision loss and gaining that independence is learning the practical skills necessary. For example, orientation and mobility, or O&M as we know it in the blind community, to learn how to navigate safely and independently is important. Also, learning independent living skills, ILS, is important to learn how to do the everyday tasks for working and maintaining a home. And of course, learning to use technology, both the existing technology and emerging technology, to contribute to living independently. These are all important. But equally important, if not more important in my view, is the social side of adjusting to vision loss. Too often, people that are facing vision loss withdraw from the world. They lose confidence and can become isolated. And this can lead to loneliness and depression. So the social side of adjustment is crucial to living that full, enriching, independent life. So what I want to focus on here is that and talk about social aspects of adjusting to loss of eyesight. And I'll do this in the context of my own experience going through this vision loss journey. So first, I'll tell you just a brief, I guess, visual history of my situation facing vision loss. I was born with congenital cataracts and severe myopia and had multiple eye surgeries before I was 6 years old. After the last surgery, my eyesight actually increased to 20/60. Which is significant. I still had significant vision loss, but I was nowhere near legally blind. I could navigate independently without using aids such as a white cane or a monocular. Also, I could read the smallest print wearing strong glasses, holding the documents close to my face. And that was my situation all through school, university, and for the first part of my career with the CRA. However, when I was in my mid-20s, I was diagnosed with glaucoma. And by the time I was diagnosed, I had lost pretty well all the vision in my right eye. So that was my, I guess, first eye problems or deterioration in vision since I was 6 years old. Then a few years later, about the time I turned 30, I developed macular degeneration caused by my myopia. At that time, they didn't have the treatments for it they have now, so I became legally blind. And that's my first introduction to using technology to help overcome my loss of vision. I used a CCTV magnifier at work, and actually I was provided with one of the first portable CCTV magnifiers that you carried in like a laptop case, because I traveled doing my job. At the time I was an income tax auditor. So I'd go out doing audits with this portable CCTV, and I used to like to say that I was every taxpayer's dream, the blind auditor. But so that's the way things stayed. We eventually moved from Newfoundland to Ottawa, and I continued my career using these tools in Ottawa in different positions within the government, and even using other technology along the way, such as Zoom Text, a magnification program for computer screens. However, in 2011, I had another surgery for glaucoma. I had had several surgeries to control it throughout the years. Unfortunately, during this surgery, my eye hemorrhaged, and I lost all my remaining vision. Needless to say, this was a huge shock, and you know, I went through quite an adjustment process in dealing with this, because I found there was a big difference between having a little bit of vision and having no vision. So I was fortunate in that I had a lot of great support from my wife and family, and also thinking back on it now, growing up, I was familiar with blindness, and I knew a lot of blind people because my father and uncle were legally blind, and they had lots of friends who were blind. So I saw them as I was growing up, getting together, doing things together, bowling, playing cards, you know, going out together, socializing. So I never thought of it as, you know, oh, if you're blind, you can't do things. I saw people who were blind living independent, full lives. So I just, you know, accepted that's the reality. So that helped me a lot when I lost all my vision, and that may be one of the reasons my big focus after dealing with the shock was I got to get back to work. Because I had the surgery was in late August, and of course I was supposed to go back to work a week later. Obviously that didn't happen, but I wanted to return to work. So I contacted CNIB at the time, I think it's now Vision Loss Rehabilitation, and arranged O&M, orientation and mobility instruction, so that I could independently get from my home in East Ottawa in Orleans to my downtown office building. So I did a lot of O&M training, and by February, I returned to work part-time and full-time by April. In this, I guess, adjustment or preparation to return to work, I encountered, I guess, my first experience with peer support as a newly totally blind person. And I met with the CRA Adaptive Technology Specialist in February to talk about what I would need, and such as using a Windows computer with JAWS, a Braille display, because I had started to learn Braille. Anyway, in meeting with him, we went for coffee, and I remember we stayed past lunch. My wife and I actually went and stayed talking to him for 2 hours. And he had a big influence on me, not so much for the knowledge and the learning I obtained from him, but it was seeing him as a totally blind or nearly totally blind person, independently traveling around the country, because he had to visit different offices across Canada, with a very positive outlook, and like never thought that he not even thought that he was struggling with this, that he was just fully back to work and living a full life, and that had a big impact on me. So after going through that and meeting with him and my O&M training, I did return to work, which for me was big in that it was I guess, one protection against becoming isolated, because I was reestablishing connections with my co-workers. In fact, when I returned to work, I was a director and had managers and staff reporting to me, and I thought, some people may be nervous. They knew me when I had some vision, and now they're interacting with me as a totally blind person. So my O&M instructor and I met with we had a staff meeting, and I encouraged them to be open and ask me any questions that they wanted. And I think that really helped break the ice, and of course, when I returned to work, I think nobody thought of me as, okay, dealing with a blind person. They thought of me in the way that, I'm a co-worker who just happens to be blind. And so that helped a lot. So after working for a couple of more years, it was time. I had 32 years service, and I knew when I was checking my pension calculation every week that it's time to retire. So my wife actually had a co-worker who knew a person who was blind, who had just retired from the Canada Revenue Agency. So we got in touch because I just wanted to find out how he found it and what the process was like. So I went to coffee with him, and again, another example of peer support. And we talked about the retirement process, but we talked about much more. He talked about other services and other things he was involved with. He showed me how to get access to paratranspo, and he told me about CCB events. So it was a big help. In fact, we're still very good friends to this day, and he's involved in some of the organizations I'll discuss a little later. So I continued and retired. And I'm happily retired now. And so after my retirement, I got involved with a number of organizations, and I just want to go through a couple of these briefly. The first organization was the first group I joined, I guess, was Get Together with Technology, a CCB program, and when I heard about this program, I heard about it actually through my independent living skills, a person with CNIB who mentioned there was a program. And I thought, this sounds great, because I was always interested in technology. When I was in university, I owned a Commodore 64 computer. So I thought, this is like a dream. Okay, here's a group of blind people discussing how to use tech. So I went to the first meeting and was immediately hooked. It was led by, I'm sure a lot of you know, Kim Kilpatrick, who's totally blind. And we just, shared ideas about how to use iPhones, Android phones, PC and Mac computers, and Apple TV, and a bunch of other issues like different kinds of canes, how to use technology to read, to listen to music, use GPS, identify objects. There was a myriad of topics discussed. But what I really found useful is that we were all there as blind people, but we weren't focused on our loss of vision. We were focused on our passion for technology. And at that time, the program was in person. I'm still a participant in the program. It's done virtually now, and which is good and bad. I miss the in-person meetings, but virtually opens it to more people who can't make the meetings. They may live in remoter areas. In fact, with GTT, I now co-lead a Mac users group for blind users with Kim that we run virtually every 2 weeks. So that's the first group. Another group I got involved with was the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians. And I learned about this group through the CRA Adaptive Technology Specialist when we met before I went to work. And I never heard of this group, but I got on their website, blindcanadians.ca, and learned about the group and actually joined it. So because I was joined, I got an email later on, I forget, maybe a year later, where some people were getting together to try to form a local chapter for the AEBC, an Ottawa-Gatineau chapter. And I was very interested, so I went to the founding meeting for this chapter and actually joined it on the executive as treasurer. Eventually, I became president for a couple of years of the group, and there was a group of us, dedicated blind people, who really wanted to advocate for local issues and to really make sure that the city of Ottawa and Gatineau removes and reduces the barriers to the full inclusion of blind and partially sighted people in all aspects of city life. So we worked together on many issues. In particular, we did a lot of advocacy during the design of the LRT to make sure that it did not pose any barriers. And like, for example, if you notice, if you're riding the LRT, the Twizzies, the wayfinding in the stations, these were all things we advocated for. The audible announcements. And again, we work together as blind people, but not focused on vision loss, focused on advocacy. And I've always loved advocacy. Even when I started my career, I was involved as a union shop steward. So it's another chance where I could, I guess, exercise my passion for advocacy and work with a group of like-minded people. And so that really helped. We continue to advocate to this day, and I guess our current big issue is the ongoing fight against shared e-scooters. We'll see where that goes. That's the next group. But leading from that group, I learned about the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the City of Ottawa. So I applied a couple of times. Eventually, I got accepted onto the committee for this latest term of council. And what this committee is, it advises City Council on the accessibility of different city services and programs. And in fact, it's a mandated committee under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And so I get to work with other people facing a variety of disabilities. Again, ensuring that the city doesn't or reduces existing barriers and doesn't introduce any new barriers. So I'm really happy and find this work to be fulfilling as well. Another group, which is not a formal group, it's actually kind of funny how I found this group. I was in the Canadian Tire with my wife one day, and we heard a cane opening. And I know my wife looked and saw my cane was still folded in the cart, and looked over, there was another blind person. So we started talking, and he said, there's a coffee group in Orleans where we get together. We're retired people, a lot of us with low vision. Why don't you come along and join us? So I never heard of this. It was just an informal group. So I thought, yeah, that sounds really interesting. So I went to the first coffee group, and I just loved it. So I continue to go to this day. And all those people have also become really good friends of mine. And, we get together every Friday, and we like to say, we try to solve the problems of the world. Now, as you know, we're not very successful, but we'll keep trying. And through this group, I learned about blind curling. So that's a CCB chapter as well, the Blind Curling Club. It took a little bit of convincing, but I decided to give it a try. And, I fell in love with it as well. It's a great sport, and we have a lot of fun. It runs in the fall and winter. I go in the fall because as good as curling is, it can't entice me to stay in Ottawa for the winter. My wife and I travel. We used to go to Florida. Now we go to Portugal for 3 months in the winter. And but I love the curling in the fall, and in fact, in the summer we have what we call summer curling, and that's where we go somewhere to keep our elbows exercised at a local pub, and we do that usually once a month. So that's some of the I guess the groups and the social connections that I made, and made a lot of good friends through all these groups. And I found it actually enhanced. I had more social connections after my vision loss. I think I still keep in touch with people I work with. We still have friends that we had before, but now I've made a whole pile of new friends, and it's been great. So this brings me to the last group I want to talk about, and it's no longer in operation. It's the New Horizons program of CNIB that CNIB used to run, and I think they are preparing a similar program that I've volunteered for, adjustment to vision loss. So what this program was, I should say, it was an 8-week program that brought people together who were facing vision loss, and it was facilitated by people who are blind. So I became a co-facilitator. I actually sat in on a couple of sessions beforehand and was really impressed with the program. I know it was led by, some may know him, Sam Fulton, and another co-facilitator. And I was really impressed with the work Sam had done with the program, and he had been doing it for a number of years. So when I was getting some O&M instruction, for a supplementary O&M instruction to learn some new routes, the instructor asked me if I wanted to co-facilitate, and I jumped at the opportunity. So I worked with Sam on a number of sessions, and the way the program worked is people who were facing vision loss would get together in a group, and Sam and I, who were both totally blind, would lead the group. And we would, I guess, talk about all aspects of vision loss. In the first 4 weeks, it was really focused on the emotional side, dealing with loss, dealing with grief, how to listen, how to adjust mentally to facing, a significant change in your life. And the second 4 weeks, were focused on practical aspects. We had people from vision loss rehabilitation come in and talk about like how to obtain orientation and mobility training, independent living skills. We had a session about technology. And at the end, the last session, we gave the people a list and talked about all the different groups that were available to join. And become involved with. We talked about various CNIB groups, CCB groups, the AEBC, other groups like, I think we talked about Achilles, the blind running group. Anyway, they left with a list of things they could get involved with. And what impressed me about this was the change in the people who attended this program. At the beginning, they were very uncertain. They felt, a lot of people going through vision loss feel alone. And now they were together with other people going through the same journey. And it was led, like myself, Sam and I facilitated the group, and we were both blind. So no longer did they feel alone. They saw how we could, were living independently, doing lots of different things. And I think that really helped them, probably in the same way that my initial meeting with the CRA adaptive technology specialist helped me. So, you know, I thought this program was great. And I remember Shelley telling me, because we did some of the programs at CCB, at their offices, and telling me that she saw a huge change in people when they first started the program and when they left it after 8 weeks. So what I'd like to, that's some of the different groups and programs I've been involved with, but what I want to close with is some just general observations. As I said earlier, I consider myself lucky because I had a really strong support from my family, from my wife, as I faced the adjustment to vision loss. Also, I had lots of experience with other blind people growing up. But what about the person who is facing vision loss, who's never met another blind person, or who doesn't have the degree of support? Then my worry is that the risk is really high for them to lose confidence and withdraw from the world and become isolated. And you know, that can, as I said earlier, can lead to loneliness and depression and dependence. So how do we deal with that? And you know, my thoughts on it is when somebody is diagnosed with unavoidable vision loss, for instance, and they leave the doctor's office, to me, there should be a bridge. In the same way that if somebody had a spinal cord injury and they left the hospital, they would be directed to rehab. So the same thing, if somebody is facing vision loss, to me, there should be a bridge where they're directed to, in this case, I guess, vision loss rehabilitation, first of all, to obtain the practical skills they need, the orientation and mobility, the independent living, technology training. But at the same time, I think there needs to be a peer support program that they can be part of to allow them to bridge that connection to living with vision loss and all the different activities and groups that they can become involved with, depending on what their interests are. And as you see from my story, a lot of what I found was through accident. Like my CRA adaptive technology specials happened to mention AEBC. My ILS instructor in CNIB happened to mention Get Together with Technology. I found out about my coffee group through hearing the click of a cane opening. So this is all by chance, and I don't think we can leave this to chance. You can have the best programs in the world, but if people don't know about them, you know, then you know, they're no good to that person. So I guess the challenge is, how do we spread the word about all these great programs that are out there and get people involved? Because when you're connected and involved, it really does lead to independence and enhances those practical skills that you've learned. So I'm going to end it there and be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fran Cocker. I've been involved in advocacy and public education around North for some years. I have low vision, and I recently been to see an ophthalmologist and tests. Once again, no mention of social adjustment of any groups. Obviously, it's not part of the universe of ophthalmologists. I think what we need to do is get together, those of us who are active in the vision loss community, get together with whatever organization it might be for ophthalmologists, particularly retinologists, but any of the other subspecialties, and explain that the emotional adjustment is as important as the physical adjustment and knowing about the basics. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Fran. I couldn't agree with you more. I've heard that story over and over again. People leave the doctor's office, they have a diagnosis that they are losing their vision, and you may get a call to CNIB or something, and you may not even get that. So to me, there's something missing there because people are missing the opportunity to the emotional, so to adjust to not only the practical side but the emotional side of dealing with vision loss. And I agree, and I like the idea of working together, or maybe even if there was a way of getting in touch or dealing with these people when they're even in medical schools before they come out as practicing ophthalmologists. Yeah.
Hello, Wayne. It's Leo Bissonette from Montreal, and finally got to meet you in person. And two things. Number one, that little MAC group that you coordinate and run is really a very dynamic group. You've had people come into that group who are wondering what is out there in technology for them. And as you've taken us through discussions of the MAC, you see people become empowered by it, curious about it, engaged with it. And as a result, they're using their Macs. And our sessions every 2 weeks over the last few years daily remind us, every meeting, just how significant that connection and support is for each of us. That's one of my comments. I think your point about leaving the doctor's office is so right on. You have people who go home and they say, what is out there? What's next for me? Life as I know it is over. Not the case as your speech today has illustrated. So well done, sir. Keep it up. And I think you're a model for others in this room to consider and learn more about and the dynamics of how to do it. Take care, Wayne. Thank you.
Thanks, Leo. No, I appreciate the kind words, and I love the MAC group too. We all learn from each other on this group, and again, it's an example of we all love technology, and it's just fun to get together and talk about it. And no, I really enjoy this group as well. So thanks, Leo. And again, we hear the same comment about leaving the doctor's office. I think it's a real problem.
And just being mindful of time, we're going to be moving on.
Thank you very much. Oh, this way, yeah.
So thank you so much, Wayne, for all your insight and sharing your stories and experiences. Thank you so much. So we'd now like to introduce our next speaker, Luna Bengio. Luna is a consultant with extensive experience in providing strategic advice on accessibility and people management. She is currently the strategic advisor to the Senior Director of the Accessibility Accommodation and Adaptive Computer Technology Directorate, leading the development of learning programs and providing advice on complex workplace accommodation situations. Luna retired from the Canadian Public Service in 2021 after a career spanning more than 30 years, including 15 years as a senior executive. In the program that everyone has received, there is a wonderful list of all of Luna's accomplishments and work history. Luna is unfortunately not being able to be here today, but is joining us by video, and then afterwards we will take a small break. So watch the screen for Luna's video. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today and to come to you, even though through a recording. I wish everyone an excellent conference. It's not my first time speaking at one of these conferences. This time it feels a little stranger because it's done via recording. And I don't have the warmth and the encouragement of the live audience in front of me, but we're going to try to muddle through and the best that we can. So today I chose to talk about a theme that I think is important for people who are blind, people with disabilities in general. And it's the recognition that without labor, nothing happens. And that's a quote from the Greek philosopher Sophocles. And it definitely is a quote that I been raised with. In my family, the expectation was always that you were going to work hard, that you were going to put in an effort, and without that, you wouldn't get anywhere. So that's been a very much a guiding principle, a guiding light for me all my life. And when you are a blind person in today's environment, and even in the environment many years ago, you know that you're going to face barriers. You know that you are going to encounter situations that are going to require that you work harder, that you make an extra effort, that you find alternative ways to obtain the information that most people take for granted, like, the name of the street that you're going to cross, or the color of the garment that you're going to wear that day, or many, many things, especially, and of course, depending on the level of vision that you have. In my case, I was born with a degenerative condition, so my level of vision has definitely evolved over the years. And at this point in my life, I can't say that I have any useful vision. So let's establish that. I also feel that very strongly that the problem is not me. The problem is the environment in which we live that creates barriers to anyone who doesn't function like some made up idea of what normal functioning should look like. And we know that in our society, if you're somewhat different, or if you are very different and you function differently, you're not going to be considered to fit within that model of normality that people think about. For example, buildings are designed for this average individual that, in my view, does not exist. Uh, Documents are designed for this average reader or consumer that does not exist. And therefore, and I've said it at one of these conferences before, I'm not the one who needs to be fixed. What needs to be fixed is our environment, the attitudes of our society, and the way that we interact with that environment. So it took me a while to realize that. It took me a while to feel that it wasn't me. I wasn't the one who was creating the problems. I was not the one who had to figure it out, who was somehow less, because the attitudes around me showed me that I was different, looked at me with this horrible sentiment that I find, which is pity. Um, and, we're always thinking, oh, poor you, your life must be so complicated. That statement is not a statement that is a theory. A lot of people have them. Well, how do you do it? And they look at me and they see me crossing the street and, oh, you're so good. Why? Because I can cross the street. So, so I've lived a lot with that, and when you live a lot in that environment, you tend to be convinced that, yeah, I must be the one that isn't doing things right. I must be the one that has issues. So I need to find ways to overcompensate. I need to be better. I need to work harder. And I can't say that it, in some ways, it served me badly because as we started this conversation talking about the importance of working hard at things, it's helped me in my life. However, I was always convinced that unless I was better, worked harder, that people weren't going to consider me the same. They were going to always say, well, you're the problem. I'm not hiring you because it's going to be, how are you going to do it? I've been to interviews, to job interviews where uh, kind of mid-career, I would come with my resume and all of the different jobs that I'd had and all the places where, I frankly have succeeded. And so the person who was interviewing me would look at the piece of paper, my CV in front of them, and then would look at me. And somehow in their minds, those things did not match and those things did not compute. So they would ask, well, how do you do this or that or the other thing, right? And so those moments, I have to say, were painful. And it takes a lot of, I'd say, resilience is the polite word to say it. It takes a lot of stubbornness and determination, uh, and wanting to make it regardless of the obstacles. And it doesn't come naturally, and it's not easy every day. So again, I would say, without labor, it doesn't happen. And that's, my blind person perspective. I I wanted to talk about how much we've evolved and how much progress we've made. Despite that, we have in Canada a very strong human rights legislative environment. We have, since 2019, the Accessible Canada Act, which for me is a game changer because it is no longer just my responsibility as an individual, as a person with a disability, to request job accommodation, to request accessibility. It is shifting and has shifted the responsibility towards organizations. Of course, it's only federally regulated organizations, but those are really involved in many of the spheres that matter, such as, of course, government, but also banks and telecommunications and the finance industry and the transportation industry. So today, we know that each of those organizations needs to be proactive and not to wait until someone comes and says, your building is not accessible, or your application is not accessible, or your website is not accessible. They have a responsibility to proactively look at those barriers and take actions in their accessibility plans. They have to report on progress and they have to make sure that they involve people with disabilities, the nothing without us. Such an important principle, such a principle that means that we are coming out of this era where other people took charge for us and other people made decisions thinking that they know what makes sense for us. It is now an opportunity for people with disabilities to have a voice, to be at the table, to be included, to be part of the decision making. So the Accessible Canada Act, only 5, almost 6 years this summer, it's going to eventually make a huge difference in Canada. It takes a little while for legislation like that to make its mark and to have its impact. But I am convinced that it's going to make a difference, and it'll continue to inspire progress across Canada. The For me, there are three ingredients that contribute to inclusion of people with disabilities. One, of course, it's that environment that we were talking about. The second one is the attitudes and the culture and the way people are treated. And I think, frankly, that's the area where we still have quite a ways to go. And the third, of course, is for anyone to have access to the individual tools and measures that they need to be successful at whatever they want to do, whether it's work or study or social activities, that they have those tools that make a difference. For me, I cannot go anywhere without my screen reader. For me, that's the kind of individual adjustment and individual accommodation I need. Those three areas are all interrelated, of course. But if we want to talk about attitudes, I have to say that still in 2025, I have and I continue to experience the attitudes, the preconceived ideas about what a person with a disability is and how we should treat them, which is we should treat them like we would treat anyone else, right? So, for example, you go for healthcare services and you are a blind person that is there with someone. And what happens is the person, the healthcare professional or the administrative assistant or whoever's in front of you, they'll talk to the other person. I was in the emergency room in early January of 2025, accompanied by my granddaughter, and they would constantly ask her, what does she want? What can she do this? What is she looking for? And my granddaughter, who's smart and who's been raised by me in many ways, will say, well, why don't you ask her? And that to me is this belief that as a person with a disability, and I don't know because I don't know enough, and I haven't done a scientific survey to find out if it happens to people who face different barriers than the one we face as blind people. But I find that it definitely happens with blind people. You're blind means you can't figure it out anything for yourself. You can't do anything for yourself. You can't think for yourself. You don't have an opinion as to the meal that you're going to order in the restaurant because someone else is with you. And so that is, for me, an attitude that continues to be so pervasive in our society of today. And so, how is an employer going to think that you're going to be a competent whatever, if their perhaps unconscious bias is that a blind person doesn't know the difference between a plate of pasta or a chicken breast, right? Or cannot make choices for themselves, or cannot have a life with activities that people would expect for that of person in those circumstances, right? So how are we going to get over that is my question. And that's the reason I really want to continue take advantage of the opportunity of an opportunity like today, where I know that usually Canadian Council of the Blind conferences are well attended by healthcare professionals. Please listen. This is important. This is a message that comes from repeated experience. I would go somewhere with my 5-year-old child and they would address the child. And it hasn't changed my children are in their 30s now. It hasn't changed. So we need more awareness. We need more opportunities like this, but we need these opportunities to become part of the mainstream professional development activities that healthcare professionals attend. Or we even need this to be part of university courses, because very often, and again, perhaps due to recent experiences in the healthcare setting, you see residents, you see younger people who are coming to see all kinds of different patients and have no clue how to address them, have no clue how to have a minimally respectful attitude towards an individual. I've had doctors tell me, "Well, I'm showing you the graph," or "Yeah, you can do this and this," and showing things on a chart. Well, I think that that needs to evolve. That needs to happen, because those kinds of barriers are often the most difficult to address. You know, you can buy a screen reader anywhere. You can buy a pair of headphones, a pair of noise canceling headphones anywhere. You can find a sit-stand desk anywhere. But you cannot, it's really hard to change the culture, the ableist culture that we live in. And someone wrote that you don't need to fix individuals. What we need is a cure for ableism, and I fundamentally, strongly believe that. On the other hand, I've encountered wonderful people, both in society and in my career. I've had by and large, a very interesting career, and nowadays I do what I love doing, which is one of these kinds of conversation, having these kinds of conversations, because I believe that those make a difference. I believe that it's by reiterating and repeating the message, we are going to slowly, perhaps one person at a time, change people's attitudes and get rid of those misconceptions. I have the privilege of doing workshops, designing, training, even podcasting. I take this opportunity to encourage all of you, even though you are not in government, to tune in into, it's called Accessible Horizons, and you can find it on the common podcasting platforms. You can even find the episodes on YouTube. And the purpose of Accessible Horizons, again, is to, in a light, conversational, humorous manner, for my co-host and fantastic colleague Nadine Charon and I to realize a dream, which is to be able to talk to people about these issues, about issues of barriers, about the fact that there are solutions to a lot of the barriers, and that we can learn if we really want to. We can evolve, we can make progress, and the best way that we can make progress is to inform ourselves, to educate ourselves, to reach out to people with disabilities. If I come into a crowded conference, it's going to be significantly challenging for me to figure out who's there and to find people. So as I often say to people who bump into me on the street, like, you can see, you should pay attention. So and it's the same thing in that kind of situation. People need to reach out. They need to want to know. They need to want to learn because, uh, as one of my very good friends says, different isn't good. Different isn't bad. Different is just different. And so it's not because I'm different that you should not treat me with respect, with dignity, and maybe with interest, because we could have a great conversation about many topics. So with that, I will bring this conversation to a close. I encourage everyone to learn, learn, learn. I encourage my fellow blind colleagues around the CCB membership to continue pushing, to continue advocating, to speak up. I encourage all of you who are allies to find ways to carry the message. Thank you and have a good rest of your conference.
Those were some wonderful messages from Luna, and we thank Luna for providing the recording for us today. Hannah Brown. So Hannah is a disability advocate currently based on the lands of the Lakwam peoples in Victoria, BC. They identify as a multiple disabled person, including having invisible dynamic disabilities, neurodivergent person, trans plus non-binary, and queer person. These identities allow them to be an equitable, intersectional, and accessible lens into the advocacy work they do. Hannah has a diverse academic background, including in sociology, anthropology, education, and biology. Their current research interests focus on community engagement and accessibility in action, aiming to bridge the gap between practical advocacy work and academic theory of accessibility. Within your program is a larger list of Hannah's impressive work and experiences. And for those of you online, the program is also available online as well. So I'd like to welcome Hannah to the stage. Hannah?
Hello again, folks. My name's Hannah. I'm very grateful to be here today to talk about the importance of holistic support and community connection. As I just mentioned, I do have some slides. They'll have a white background with black text on most slides. Some slides, like my current title slide, will have blue circles with white text over them, and they have colourful shapes and lines for decoration. And they're mostly here just to keep me on track and going in the right direction, because I'm pretty passionate about accessibility and holistic and community care, so otherwise I could take us well past lunch and no one wants that. So, the clicker works too. I know we had a land acknowledgement to start the day, but I also want to acknowledge that today we're located on traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin, who have studied, travelled and inhabited these lands for millennia. I also flew in to be at this conference from the west coast of Canada, living in Victoria on Vancouver Island, and I live and work at the University of Victoria, so I want to acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen, Songhees, Kokapsan and Esquimalt peoples on whose traditional territory the University of Victoria stands, and the Lekwungen and Wasatch peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. As my accent may have already given away, I am originally from the UK, and I think it's especially important for me as a British person to acknowledge the ongoing connection of Indigenous people to the land and their continued presence and connection despite the ongoing continued project that is colonialisation. Focusing on decolonising work we do is important, and it also links to disability. Colonial systems have shaped our understanding and experience of disability, particularly within Indigenous and other marginalised communities. So next up, I just wanted to talk about myself a little. That didn't come out quite right. I don't want to just focus on myself, but all knowledge is situated, so all knowledge we bring is based on our own past experiences and beliefs. So the slide I have up now has a selfie of me standing outdoors celebrating a graduation. So I'm wearing a traditional black graduation cap, a mortarboard, and a gown with a gold and black academic hood. In the picture, I have shoulder-length wavy hair dyed pink with pinkish purple glasses, and I'm wearing red lipstick. So as mentioned in the introduction, I identify as multiply disabled, including having invisible and dynamic disabilities. Because of that, most days people look at me and I don't fit what society thinks of when they think of a disabled person, because my disabilities aren't easily viewed from the outside, and I am fortunate to have a lot of days where they are better days and I do not have to use any additional supports. And that affects the way that I'm treated and the barriers that I face. I do have severe hyponia, farsightedness with astigmatism, but that is corrected by my glasses. I'm also a neurodivergent person, and as mentioned, I'm non-binary and queer, and naming these identities is important to me, like I said, because it kind of situates my work. As mentioned, I do have that diverse academic background, mostly because I always want to learn new things, and I found myself working across multiple departments because we sometimes draw these arbitrary lines between what knowledge fits in which boxes, and I like to spread myself across them and learn as much as I can. And I also have a diverse work background. I actually do have a health background. I started my first full-time job was as an emergency medical dispatcher, answering ambulance emergency calls and doing the triage system there. I also worked as an ambulance technician after that, and then did some quality assurance within the healthcare system before moving to Canada and shifting onto educational and support roles as a teaching assistant, sessional lecturer, learning strategist, tutor, and job coach. Now I'm kind of naming myself as an accessibility advocate a lot of the time, because that summarises the work that I do and how my focus has shifted onto making sure every environment is accessible as possible. Thinking about how we currently do care, we often focus on small parts. I've titled this slide with the idiom that comes to mind here: we can't see the wood for the trees. Even simply looking at things like first aid, we often treat the emergency and then look at the whole person, which is really important. An example that comes to mind here about how we can't just focus on the small things is an injury that I had. I used to be a gymnast, and I had an injury where I landed on my head and shoulder. Most of my pain was in my shoulder, but that wasn't the main worry, because that was my neck at the time. And so we can't just focus on one part of a system, we have to focus on the entire person. And our well-being is more than just our physical health. It's this dynamic blend of mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. I've included a figure on the slide here from a paper called Making Connections to Improve Health Outcomes. It's a graphical representation of whole person health. So it has a box across the middle that is split diagonally. On the left side, it says health, and on the right side, it says disease, with the diagonal line splitting these two areas. In the middle, over this box, is a more vertical box that has biological, behavioural at the top, and underneath social and environmental with an image of a person drawn. The vertical component that I just described represents the whole person, the biological, behavioural, social and environmental axis, and the horizontal component represents the axis of health and disease and how we can move between it. This paper tries to highlight how biomedical research often favours a reductionist approach, emphasising on a single disease or a single organ or a single set of factors, which fall short when it comes to addressing the interconnected factors that contribute to the worst health outcomes for all people. So, for example, doctors will often focus on the causes of health without thinking about what causes the causes. So, for example, a very simple example, thinking about bad diet, what causes people to have a bad diet? You know, what time, financial, other factors can cause that, and what connects the person as a whole. On the next slide, I have 2 examples of holistic approaches I've taken in my work. So on the left of the slide is a sustainable livelihoods framework that is a strengths-based framework that I've used in my work with the National Educational Association of Disabled Students. It is a system that helps individuals and communities build their resilience and their social and economic security. So it is a circle that is split into 6 segments. Each segment has a different topic and then a list of areas under that topic. The 6 topics are basic needs, connections, sense of self, skills and employability, money and health. Even when we're thinking about these 6 different areas as if they're not separate. So my sense of self may be related to my skills and employability, my money, my connections, and my basic needs will be affected by things like money, skills and employability. But what this wheel allows us is to take a view of a person as a whole. So the way I've used this is when we're doing job coaching, Sustainable Livelihoods has taught us to examine the person as a whole, think about these different areas, you know, where do they have assets, where do they have strengths within each of these areas, and where do they need to build more skills and more resilience. From this, we often see themes coming out of this. So 1 or more areas will be lower on the assets or strengths, and there will be an underlying theme that we need to work on together. On the right of this is a wellness wheel. This I've used to talk to youth about wellness in my role, again as a job coach at Can Assist. Can Assist is an entity attached to the University of Victoria, but not the same as the university. It is currently grant funded and it works to support disabled people in all aspects of life. I work with the employment programme, but they also have an assistive technology branch. They have people that work in policy and development and education, and lots of different ways we support folks with disabilities. This image, is a circle cut into different slices, but this time there are 8 sections for different areas of wellness. These areas are occupational, environmental, intellectual, spiritual, emotional, physical, financial, and social. This is designed to help folks understand where they currently are in their wellness journey. I think too often wellness has a very narrow focus that can exclude those with disabilities. If we're thinking about, you know, focusing just on physical wellness, what does physical wellness traditionally look like, versus what wellness actually is. And this was especially important when I'm talking to these folks in an employment perspective. You know, I'm thinking about their occupational wellness, but that's not something I'm going to achieve if they're not feeling socially well, physically well, emotionally well. And how can we develop them and put them in a position to find the job or the career that is going to set them up? Well, we need a good foundation. And so examining the person, the whole, like this, is a good way to achieve this work. I'm now going to talk about some more case studies. I focus quite heavily on case studies and stories here, because as Brene Brown says, stories are data with a soul. I grew up and a lot of my early academic work was a very quantitative, very numerical based, but I've recently fallen more in love with a qualitative aspect as well, and how stories and case studies can really fill in gaps that sometimes numbers can't quite. And for folks who don't know Brene Brown, she's a researcher, academic, and storyteller who spent many years studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. And I would recommend her books to everyone. I listen to her audiobooks quite a lot. In fact, I was listening to one on the flight over yesterday. The first case study I want to look at here was in my role as a teaching assistant. Specifically, this was recently, I was a teaching assistant for a third-year undergraduate course in biology. And I received feedback after the fact, and I want to read the quote out that I've added here. Not just to toot my own horn, there is a point here. So, Hannah is a very positive and kind instructor. They have a great way of communicating with students and creating an open learning environment where we feel comfortable to be ourselves and ask questions. And the thing that really stood out to me there, and the reason I was especially proud, was the feedback that said they felt comfortable being themselves. Academics often forget students are whole humans, they're not just robotic students, and they bring their own lives from outside into the classroom. I like to take that into account and consider my students as a whole when I'm working with them, when I'm supporting them. I do give a lot of flexibility within my classrooms and just work to make them as accessible as possible and set students up for success, not only in the classroom, but being able to advocate for themselves when they've left the classroom environment later. I've also done a lot of work within the student advocacy group at the University of Victoria, that is the Society for Students with a Disability. One way I've worked there is with their peer support groups. So about 3 years ago now, we set up some peer support groups. I specifically have facilitated the neurodivergent queer peer support group. And as the facilitator, I found it was a great way to get that shared understanding and those shared intersectional identities. We've also had groups around chronic pain, autism, and mental health. And through these identity-based groups, we've seen students grow and develop their confidence and just find somewhere that they, again, can be themselves, can have that shared understanding with people that know what they're going through. We also do a lot of advocacy work within this group. Again, there is a lot of power in numbers with the advocacy work. So through this community, we've been able to do a lot to try and change the university. One thing we have done is we don't really get much snow in Victoria. So I'm going to talk about snow, knowing that I'm talking about a very small problem compared to some places in Canada. But when we had snow recently, the snow clearing efforts on campus really weren't up to scratch. I took a picture at one point where they had cleared some parking spaces and stopped at the accessible parking space next to it, but not actually cleared the accessible parking space. And only through saying things about that, reporting it, and through our collective power are we able to make change on some very simple things, like when you're clearing snow, can you please clear the accessible parking space? And can you please clear paths that are wide enough for someone who uses a wheelchair to get through, not a tiny narrow path that you can't get through with a mobility aid. We've also been working on a project called Access for All for the past 4 years now, that really tries to push the traditional in-person academic setting and promotes more hybrid access to education. Because during the pandemic, online didn't work for everyone, but it definitely worked for some people that had not had traditional access to education. So why can we not promote a more hybrid or high flex model and allow people the ability to choose how they access their education? Not only does that support disabled folks, it might support someone who has care commitments, who has work commitments, who might need to travel for a family emergency. They can still maybe attend the classrooms otherwise. And it just really opens up the possibilities. It's a long advocacy, like I said, 4 years now, but real change takes time, as was mentioned previously with legislation. So we're continuing to push through and make education as accessible as possible at our university. I'm also on University of Victoria's Accessibility Committee. BC has their Accessibility Act, like I know several provinces and territories do. This was brought in 2021, and part of that was to form a committee, an accessibility committee, to achieve certain legislative goals. But not only has that committee been important to push through legislative goals, I've also found it as a great way to make cross-university and cross-community connections. So I've met people at the university that I wouldn't normally interact with, been able to connect staff to students that might need that connection, or other ways to, you know, someone's thinking about X idea, where I know that already exists at a different part of the university, so how can we connect those people together? So we're not having to always go from scratch, we can develop on each other's advocacy and work. And one thing that came out of that group that we're particularly proud of is we connected the technology department to the student group, and we're able to develop a pool of disabled student users for testing of technology in various spaces. And we're able to work that in a way that they are paid honoraria for their time and effort in the technology testing. And then the last case study I have here is as a learning strategist. So I work for the Learning Assistance Programme at the university, where students can get tutors or learning strategists to support them. A student who I started working with about 1.5 years ago, I had met her definitely in that emergency situation in regards to her academics. But once we got past the immediate need, we were able to take time and work through the barriers she was facing with her disabilities and her schoolwork. And it definitely became a more holistic approach after we fought the initial fires. And I've helped to support her in multiple aspects of her life outside school, as, like I mentioned, with a TA, she's not going to thrive without other aspects of her life being organised, all in place. And this is also, for me, a form of peer support. So while not all the learning strategists in our group are disabled or neurodivergent, I am. And so I find that the learning strategy work I do with students is a form of peer support and really allows me to support them in a way that they don't necessarily get when they get a non-disabled and neurotypical learning strategist, because they often teach learning in the ways that their brain works, which might be different to the ways that other brains work. And so that's another way that I've found community and peer support connections can be really engaging. And I just want to finish with a case study that is very close to my heart because it's myself. This one, okay. So finish with a case study that's close to my heart as myself. I've put a picture up on the screen here of me from January 2021. This picture is me sitting upright on a bed, wrapped in a white comforter. I'm holding a pink cup that is full of tea, and you can see my laptop and my Nintendo Switch on the bed too. I've not just put that up because I want to include lots of pictures of me in this slideshow. I've included that because this is me when I first came to Canada in a hotel room during my 14-day mandatory COVID quarantine. I'm smiling in this picture. I can't remember who I was sending it to, but I was clearly showing someone how I was doing. But it's not really a smile that I would recognize today. And I don't, looking at it, think it's really making it all the way to my eyes. I had just moved alone to the other side of the world. When I moved to Canada in January 2021, I knew one person who happened to live in Canada. This Hannah didn't know who they were, not really, and they certainly couldn't be stood here talking to you. They wouldn't have the confidence to do that. But in Canada, once I got out of that 14 days in a hotel room, would not recommend that kind of quarantine. One of the days they had to turn the Wi-Fi off because they were having connection issues, so I was completely isolated for about 8 hours with like no connection to the outside world. I do not want to do that again. I do not want to be in my own head, thank you. But in Canada, I found community. Within that Society for Students with a Disability, I found connection, I found shared experiences, and through finding community and that social support, I found connection and belonging. And this is an essential form of self-care, and it strengthened myself and my resilience, because the past 4.5 years in Canada haven't been easy for me, but they have been so valuable. They've promoted my healing from trauma that I hadn't even realised was there. And while I have access to healthcare in the time here, that's often, to fix an emergency. My real care and wellness comes from my community and comes from my support. I discovered through community how to be me. I've discovered who me actually is, and I was allowed to flourish within my disability identity and discover that academically that's the route I wanted to go as well. And I just wanted to leave us with this. The conference is titled Together We Thrive, because together we really do thrive. I couldn't be here today without my community, and I wouldn't want to be here today without my community. But together we can achieve, I won't say everything, but a lot of what we really want to achieve. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions folks might have.
Just as a reminder to everyone, if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll have time for a couple.
Hi. First of all, fantastic presentation. It was really interesting to hear your perspective, just because, intersectionality is such a big thing, and I really appreciate you being so vulnerable with that. One thing that I found interesting recently was a lot of the things that are accessible for people that are cane users, whether they use crutches or they use wheelchairs, are also things, for example, with your snow removal, helpful for those parents with strollers as well. And there are so many of those common occurrences, things that are accessible can also be really helpful for those that are sighted. And with that in mind, how would you potentially, to put you on the spot, I apologize, how would you potentially look at those things and making a lot of those things more common knowledge while also keeping in mind the accessibility piece? I mean, I don't know how much experience you have with accessible technology. If it's made with the average everyday person that is not, disabled in mind, it is amazing and fantastic. But the minute it's made to focus on closing that gap and making it accessible, it is not as great. And so how would you look at keeping those things in mind with manufacturers, as well as advertising them appropriately, as this is something that is helpful just for the average person, but the average person that, has a disability, the average person that doesn't have a disability?
Yeah, so that is a great question, and I'll try and be brief. I won't open up my manifesto right now. I often try and emphasize that we think about disability when we think about accessibility, but accessibility is for everyone. Everyone has access needs. If we lived in a world with superheroes, some people might need the access need of not being able to fly. But most people's access needs are met usually, and so they don't notice that they have access needs because they're being met. And a good example is curb cuts, so the sidewalk ramp, yeah, we'll call it that, that we often have, is aimed at accessibility for folks with mobility aids, but also helps those who push a pram or stroller around, helped me yesterday when I was wheeling my suitcase around, and things like that. So I want to broaden what we think of when we think of accessibility, and thinking about how we make technology more accessible. I agree with you that a lot of accessibility features are useful for more than one reason. Things like read aloud technology might be, screen readers are crucial for folks who are blind, but they also really help someone who might, because of their neurodivergence, have problems with that attention and that executive function and be better listening than they are reading. Or they might want to, I have a friend who has to be lay flat for most of the day, so it's a lot easier for her to listen to something than it is to try and read something. I don't know if folks are trying to read a book while you're lay flat in bed ever, but it's quite difficult. And so it's just reframing how we really think about who these things can benefit, and also bringing it more into the mainstream. I think sometimes accessible technology is clunky because it's made specifically for a certain user in mind, rather than just thinking, how can I make this program to do this thing for everyone? I hope that answered your question.
Hello. Sorry about that. My name is Sheldon Brown, and I'm the Specialist of Community Engagement for the CNIB. And I run our scholarship program, and I actually had a question. I'd love to draw on your experience in education as a teaching assistant. Obviously, we're always working on new language and advocacy as it relates to education, healthcare, across the board. But something I hear a lot when I work with my applicants and my recipients is the amount, as we know in education, it is an uphill battle when it comes to accessibility. And a lot of people, aside from the personal advocacy piece, feel like they never get the answers they need, that they never receive the responses that they would like. It's less of a collaborative effort and more of a, here you go, work with what we got. What advice would you have from your experience as a TA that I could relay back to students who feel sometimes a little defeated going up against an institution trying to receive either accessible documents, like you said, access to education?
Yeah. My main recommendation for students like that would be to find their community. I think often at the Society for Students with a Disability, we have people coming in asking questions like that, like what do I go for this accessible document, or how do I get this accommodation? And the benefit of community there is someone might A, already know the answer for you, or B, have similar experiences where you can go together with that shared experience. And even self-advocacy, I think, takes community, because you need that support, that background, that self-care in a way, to be like, oh, I tried to ask for this accommodation and it went terribly. Let me vent in the space that I know is safe for me to vent in, and then regroup and talk about how we're going to go forward. So I really think students trying to find their community on campus or in their institution is really important. And if they can't find it, I know it's difficult, but try and create it, because we need more spaces of community, of shared understanding and identity, I think.
That's great. Thank you so much, Hannah. We're going to move on now, just being mindful of the time. If you do have any other questions for Hannah or for Wayne or any of our other speakers, please email us at ccb@ccbnational.net. You can also type it in the Zoom chat or in the Q&A, and we will forward them to our speakers. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing with us your experiences and knowledge, and for being an accessibility advocate. It's something we truly do need, so thank you. Our next speaker, Rebecca Jackson. Rebecca is a development officer at Statistics Canada. She lives with an eye condition, but did attend mainstream school. Rebecca worked as a summer student with the Canadian Council of the Blind and as a participant in the GTT program. She has found support and inclusion through CCB and mentors who offered guidance on blindness. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Jackson, and today I'm going to be speaking about mentorship, technology, and the importance of community. So, as mentioned in the introduction, my eye condition is retinopathy of prematurity, so I was born 3 months premature, and as a result, I am almost totally blind. I have a little bit of light perception, that's about it. So growing up, I went to a mainstream school, and throughout my schooling, I had a lot of really good support from an educational assistant and an itinerant teacher for the visually impaired. So my itinerant teacher, he was really wonderful in teaching me a lot of blindness-related skills, such as orientation and mobility instruction, as well as learning Braille, and that's a crucial skill. And my educational assistant, she was foundational in my learning of technology, particularly learning how to type on a QWERTY keyboard. That was something foundational for later on. But being in the mainstream school, I didn't really have a lot of interaction with other people who are blind. And so when I was about 10 years old, I did have my first interaction with someone who was blind, and it was wonderful because I felt like I wasn't alone, which is, I think, something that is a really, really important thing. So when I started high school, two really wonderful things happened. The first thing that happened was I got my very first iPhone with a screen reader called VoiceOver, which is the screen reader on iOS. And that was great because finally I could text my friends in class just like everybody else. And it was also a wonderful tool that opened up so many doors. I was, learning about all these apps that could help me with navigation, GPS apps for, at the time, reading text was a big thing. This was kind of before the AI sort of started to help us out, but it was also a really fantastic tool for just learning. And it was also the time that I got to start attending the Get Together with Technology program. And that was such a cool experience because we'd all get to talk about different apps that would help us out, and we'd swap stories about, hey, what app works best for you for reading text, what works well for reading books, for writing, that kind of thing. We'd have all kinds of different knowledge. But one of the things that I really gained out of the GTT program was meeting other blind people, and particularly blind adults who had experiences that I could ask questions of. How did you get to the GTT tonight? How did you get your groceries? Do you live on your own? Do you live with family? Like, how do you do that? How do you live as a blind person? And so being able to ask people questions and learn their stories too. I love learning people's stories. It's so great to learn people's stories. They have so much to offer. We can always learn from each other's experiences. And so I actually met a really wonderful friend and mentor, David Green. Some of you might know him, but he had just opened up my world from a mobility perspective. He really took me under his wing, and he was able to, help me to be confident in exploring my world and navigating and getting around with my cane. So when I graduated from high school, I started my undergraduate degree in psychology at Carleton University and my minor in disability studies. And that was around the time when I started to get out and about on my own a little bit more and start traveling independently, and David was really instrumental in that. So when I started traveling on my own, I started interacting a lot with the general public. And I know a lot of times people see us out on the street with our cane or with a guide dog, and they say, oh, how can we help? And they want to be of assistance. So here are a few tips that might be helpful for you if you want to help somebody who's blind. So when you approach us, ask us just ask us, do you need assistance? And if the answer is yes, we can tell you how we want to help. And if the answer is no, then please respect that and we'll continue on our way. Please do not grab the cane or like us, because it is scary. Because if you grab our cane, we can't feel what's under our feet. And if you grab us, then we don't know where we're going. We're being pushed, we're being pulled. I remember one time I got on a bus and there was 3 or 4 people all pushing me into a seat. So just, ask how you can be of assistance, and we will let you know. Also, during my time at school, I worked at the Canadian Council of the Blind as a summer student. And through that experience, I got to have so many great chats with with a lot of people there. And again, like it was a really nice place to be able to talk to people about blindness. And it was just a very accepting place to have a summer job. I got to do my O&M, my orientation and mobility training. And another thing that I did was I organized a youth pizza and games night. And this was a really big set of firsts for me. And this is kind of an example of how community can really help us out. So at that time, I was really new to getting my groceries with customer service, with the assistance of customer service. And so one of our tasks was to plan out the night, grab some snacks from the store. And so a colleague of mine we went to the store, we got customer service to help us. We said, hey, we want to find drinks and snacks. And they were really great, and they helped us find what we needed. And then later on that evening, I had another first. I ordered pizza for the first time, and so all the youth got pizza and snacks and drinks, and it was a big confidence booster, because I think sometimes when we haven't had those experiences and having people kind of cheering us on and helping us out, and also just hearing their experiences can really make a huge difference. So once I graduated from university, actually before that, I had another summer job, and I was working at Marketo and demonstrating a PowerPoint add-in that they make called Engage. And this experience was, I think, one of the most wonderful things about this experience was the fact that I had a manager who really saw me as an equal and just another person on the team. And I think this is something that I really wish that a lot of employers would do, is they would just see us as equals. So I would demonstrate the product to various government departments, and I would get up there and say, hey, this is the product. If you hear my screen reader, if you hear a funny little robotic voice, that's my screen reader talking. And if you see me, feeling a device here, it's my Braille display. And I'd kind of go on and talk. And so the blindness wasn't really front and center, it was just kind of there. And I think also just having expectations of people and kind of treating them as equals, having the same expectations as anybody else, get up there, do a presentation. And so once I was, after my time at Carleton, once I graduated, I started working at Statistics Canada. And I started off as a data analyst, and I did a lot of research, and my time in university really prepared me for that, because I was able to sort of hone my research skills and also my proficiency with Microsoft Office products, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that kind of thing. And that's another thing that is really important, is learning your technology and learning it inside out, learning keyboard shortcuts. Make sure you can zip around your applications as fast as you can and as efficiently as you can, because you're keeping up with everybody and everything. So basically, after that, like when I was at Statistics Canada, I had my first job in kind of data analyst. But now, in October of 2023, I started as a development officer, and in that role, I do accessibility testing, and I test the accessibility of surveys. So that's what I do now. But in that role too, I think, obviously proficiency with technology and learning your way around websites, learning your way around all your hotkeys with your screen reader, learning multiple screen readers even, to troubleshoot. If one thing doesn't work with one screen reader, try it with another sometimes, and also just finding solutions that work for you. And in the past year or so, I've just moved out to my own apartment, and that has been an adventure. That has been a really big adventure for me, but it's been a really good growth opportunity too. And in that situation too, just finding the solutions that work for you. They don't always have to be high tech. They can be like putting, bump dots on your stove, or finding small appliances that you really love to use. And also from a technological perspective, using apps like Be My Eyes and Ira and Seeing AI, like the amount of times I pull out Seeing AI to just check, like, what even is this box of food that I got? You know, it's amazing really what technology's done for us, especially with AI. I also have the Meta glasses, which I really like. Actually, the other day, it was great. I go to an exercise class for people who are blind here in Ottawa, and they pair us up with volunteers, and it is a wonderful experience. But the other day, like, I was going to this exercise class and I was a bit early. I had a snack. I was, you know, just kind of hanging out, and I was like, where is the garbage can? I don't know where that is. So I put on my Meta glasses and I asked them, like, hey, what do you see? And they happened to see a garbage can, and I said, how do I get there? And they told me, just get off the bench, turn right, and it's right there. And I was able to find that garbage can with the help of AI. So that's pretty cool. Anyways, I just want to kind of conclude by saying that mentorship is really important. Having people who you can ask questions of and who you can talk to about their experiences, and also people who cheer you on, who believe in you, who have faith in you that you can do something, and also are there if you know, if you try something, it doesn't work out, and they encourage you to get up and try again. Technology is vital for us as blind people. It opens up so many doors, so many doors. It evens the playing field. It allows us to have jobs that we can, you know, exceed at and excel at. It allows us to figure out what things are in our environment. And I encourage everybody to learn as much as they can about technology. And community, well, I mean, it takes a village, right? So community is really important. Without the blind community helping each other out, where would we be, right? And so I just wanted to say that these things are vital to the success of us as blind people and to everyone. So thank you for listening to my talk today, and I'm open to any questions.
Rebecca, it's Leo Bissonnette from Montreal. You may remember me at one point as you were on your journey. And my point here in making that comment is that I watched you grow in that community to become the person you are today. And I think all the points that you've made today underline the importance of community, underline the importance of mentorship and collegiality. Technology is all part of it. Well done.
Thank you.
Hi, Rebecca. My name is David Woods, and I would just like to echo Leo's comments. I was one of those people in David Green's office that summer that you were working at CCB, and I felt then that you were an amazing person, that you were, I don't know if I mentioned this to you to your face, but I thought, this young lady's going places. So I want to congratulate you for all your success, and also include the support that you've had, because we're all fortunate when we have difficulties and challenges. We have this community that keeps us supported and keeps us inspired. So I'm just saying thanks. You are an inspiration. Thanks so much.
It's Kelly McDonald here. Rebecca, really nice talk. Everybody's done tremendous talks. One of the things that you spoke about was mentorship. And I know myself from my life experience how important that has been for me. And I think that acknowledgement of those who are around you is really wonderful, and thank you for doing that. But I also know that advocacy piece, and you need the right personality for it, and it sounds like you have it, because you're always going to have somebody in the office come and say, oh, I'm new here. How do you do what you do? And you got to, even on your worst days, keep that patience. So I'm wondering about your experience with that kind of thing, how you've had to deal with that, and also, you're right, about the speed and knowing your software so that you can switch, so that when something goes funny, you might have to do something else. But mostly for us, our ears, doing what we do as a blind person, keeping up with the people who can see, you got to be able to be fast just to go from one thing to another, because that's the expectation and the average. Thank you and good luck on the road ahead.
Hello, it's Sheldon Brown again. I just want to say first off, I really enjoyed your presentation, and as a community member with a different visual impairment, it's really nice to hear that, not nice to hear, but that a lot of our journeys have been the same and having to deal with unfortunate circumstances. But I just really want to commend you, especially on the resilience piece, as someone who has worked in industries that were not built for people with sight loss. I'm a very large proponent of figuring out what's going to work for you and doing everything you can to make the best out of it and to do the best of your ability. I think it's something that's really important, because it's not to say that every option presented to you is going to be easy, but it's the accountability of us wanting to strive for our best to make sure that we are using every tool to the best of our ability. So I wish you all the best of luck in the future, and I just wanted to say great presentation and thank you for your points.
Hi, Rebecca. It's Jennifer Urosevic here. I'm curious to know, what would you like to see in the future related to technology? What is your big idea that would help you either in your career or for the community?
That's a really wonderful question. So I think for the community, I would love to see more incorporation of AI to help us out, because I think that's a really crucial tool, especially for access to visual information. So I'd like to see that incorporated in more aspects of life, and also just navigation as well. Like, I think navigation is one of the hurdles that I've had personally, that I think a lot of other people who are blind or visually impaired also, experience. Getting around can be tricky sometimes. So I think, especially in the area of navigation, being able to use AI to make things a little bit easier, whether that's, describing intersections, telling us, what's around us, and just having that incorporated. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Rebecca is definitely a great example of the next generation, and I'm old enough to be able to say that. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, definitely have inspired me. So we have 5 minutes, roughly, for our next speaker, Sam Burns. Sam is the Chief Executive Officer of Marquito Incorporated. Sam has a few things to say, and then after that, we will be breaking for some lunch. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? I'm the last thing between you and an excellent lunch. I could see the food, I can see the drinks, so I promise this will be short. I was asked to talk a bit about the importance of social inclusion and the importance of community support. So I will begin by saying I run a small software company, and it's a PowerPoint add-in, and there's an accessibility component which makes it easy for people to create accessible documents. But it did not always start out that way. When we started out, we were very small. We didn't know about accessibility. And we started selling our product to companies and to the government. And in fact, I know something about social exclusion, because when you start a company, you're really starting from nothing. You have no connections, you have no employees, you're all alone, and you're in your room, and you just want to get a conversation going. You just want to be invited to a meeting or something, and then to learn about what somebody might need. You just want to participate and belong and participate. The way I sold my software, and by now you can probably tell I'm not a very good salesperson. I spent a lot of time in front of a computer screen. I wrote 300 hand letters to different people in Ottawa, because I'm from Ottawa, and we started selling to the Canadian government. And the only person that picked up the phone and said, hey, I'll give you a chance. I'm not going to guarantee you anything, but I'll give you a chance. You can come and we can have a conversation, was an amazing, inclusive person called Marc Brouillard, who was the acting CIO at Treasury Board at the time. So we started working with him and his team. It was fantastic. And then one day he called me to say, we like your software, but there's some issues around accessibility, and we would really need you to come take a look at this. And that's where I met Luna Bengio, who gave the talk earlier today. And to say I was offside is an understatement. I was completely offside. She was so gracious. Peter Field was there also. They took the time to explain to me what the challenges were, what we could do to help. And so that kind of started us off on this journey of building accessible software. And I knew enough to know that I didn't know enough. And so what I did then was I reached out to the Paul Metten Center for Students with Disabilities at Carleton University. And I said, I'm trying to build this software that's accessible, but I need help, and I need people that could help me test it and make it better. And that's where I met Rebecca Jackson. And like one of the questions earlier, one of the comments, I knew then I was in the presence of greatness. I knew. And what do you do when you see so much potential in somebody? What do you do with that? And I kept asking myself that. And so Rebecca started helping us make sure our software is more accessible, and she had all these great ideas, and she was so good navigating the software. So we worked closely, and I asked her, I was like, I know you go to Carleton, but like, where did you learn this stuff? Because like, I went to Carleton also, and nothing against Carleton, but this comes from somewhere else. And she's like, well, you know, I do this program called GTT, Get Together with Technology, with the Canadian Council of the Blind. And I said, aha, there it is. And so then I met all these great people at the council. Somebody I have to mention, and he's very humble, and he'll probably get a bit embarrassed when I mention his name, but is Jim Prowse. Jim Prowse has been a mentor of mine for years. I've learned so much from him, and in fact, our business is modeled based on his style, which is very inclusive, very understanding, and always tries to get the best out of people. If you've worked with Jim, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but there's just a goodness you feel in his aura. So very grateful for having Jim as a mentor for me. One of the things Jim said to me was, you should go to Toronto and you should go to White Cane Week. So I did. I spent the whole day there. It was fascinating. I'd go from booth to booth and I would talk to people, and then at lunch, we had lunch together. And not knowing much about Toronto, the people I met there, as we were having conversations, for whatever reason, I thought, oh, you're probably like the controller at Shoppers Drug Mart, or you probably do accounting for the Maple Leafs, or you know, something like that. And it turns out I was floored by the level of poverty, how difficult it was for people with blindness to access positions, jobs. And so that really left a mark on me, and I thought, there's all these amazing resources. Like, we go all over the world looking for resources and natural resources, and there's this amazing resource, this brilliant resource right here, right in our own backyards, all around us. And they just want the exact same thing I wanted when I started my company. They just want a chance. They want a chance, and they want a meeting. And I thought, when I started selling my software, I didn't expect everyone to purchase it right away. And that's okay. But just having a chance, and that's helpful, to have that conversation and have the opportunity to learn, oh, well, maybe I can improve this, and maybe they have this pain point, and maybe I can respond to this. And so I thought back to the first gentleman I mentioned, Marc Brouillard. And so you have to imagine, at those levels, you're very important, you have big staffs, big budgets, and you're used to being around other big companies, big entities. And so it's very special for somebody in that position to say, you know what, I'm going to be inclusive and include this other small, player, or this small company, or this small, I'm going to give them a chance. So I was at White Cane Week, and I was talking to somebody, and they were mentioning Rebecca Jackson, because we were going to go to a conference. I was invited to go to CSUN by the National Federation of the Blind. And I hate to travel alone, so I invited Rebecca, and I invited Kim, and who else did we have with us? Maryse. I went to high school with Maryse. She did all of her translation, and there's one other person, I think Albert. Anyways, so a whole bunch of them went, and this person said, oh, you're so lucky to be going with Rebecca Jackson. I was like, yeah, I know. And it's like, oh, you don't even know, like, she had to go to this thing in Colorado, and there's this challenge, and you had to cook for 20 people. And so she had to go to the grocery store alone and feel all the ingredients, put them all together, cook everything for 20 people. And I thought to myself, I can't even do that for myself. I'm almost 40, and I still don't know how to cook. But yeah, during that trip, we got to know each other more. And then one day we were just talking on the phone, and you were saying you were applying for jobs or something, or things weren't going too well. And then I thought, wow, this is crazy. You're so brilliant. People, they're stupid if they're not going to hire you if they can't see that. You're such an asset. Anybody would be so lucky to have you. And it's and I'm talking, and I'm listening to myself. I'm like, oh my God, you should come work here. Please, would you want to come here? And we had such a great time. And it started off helping us test the software. But then I asked Rebecca, what do you want to do? And she said, I want to teach people how to use the software. I want to teach people how to use technology. And I thought, okay, cool. And the thing you realize is it is a community. And specifically in this case, I have to say it's the Canadian Council of the Blind. That's the community. Because for Rebecca to arrive to our office, all the mobility stuff, for us then to leave and go to countless departments, behind that, I asked, wow, you're really good at doing this, how did you? And it's oh, David Green. David Green was mentioned earlier. David Green helped me and showed me how to get here from there and stuff. And then whenever we needed help, the council was always there. So it's you work with a person, but it's not just the person, it's the whole community. So for that, I'm extremely grateful. And I just want to thank you all for giving me the chance to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's a great example of community working together, a combination of the sighted world and perhaps the non-sighted world, but that's what we've been talking about this morning. It's equality, it's attitudes, it's how we are perceived. And that really is life-changing for anyone within the community, just to be perceived as a person with knowledge, a person with experiences, and a person with stories. So I would like to thank all of our speakers this morning. Everybody was very insightful. Thank you for sharing the experiences. I hope you all enjoyed listening to everybody. And now we can reconvene for lunch. We'll be coming back around 12:50, so please enjoy some lunch. And again, thank you to all of our speakers this morning. Joy. We have a wonderful speaker, Francois Couillard, Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Association of Optometrists. And Francois is also a member of Canadian Council of the Blind, and he will be giving us an update on the National Eye Care Strategy, originally known as Bill C-284. Welcome, Francois.
It's really great to be here today. I want to start by thanking the Canadian Council of the Blind for inviting me to be here and for their leadership over the several years that I've been associated with them, how they bring people together. They've really been the glue that brings all our different organizations together into one coalition. So kudos to the Canadian Council of the Blind. I think events like this are really a testament to your leadership and commitment. I changed my notes a little bit. From what I gathered so far, it's all about stories. So I need to share a story as well. So please bear with me. That story will lead us into C-284. And I think it will help illustrate why a national strategy for vision care is really needed in Canada. Let me take you back to Halloween night. Spooky. Ooh, Halloween night. I know it's bright and sunny out there, but just visualize October 31, 2023, so a year and a half ago. It's a regular evening. I'm sitting at the dinner table with my wife, enjoying dinner. Suddenly, I turn to her and I say, "Darling, I can't see you." Yeah, she's sitting to my left. I'm sitting here, and I can't. It's just really bizarre. I can't see her. So I've got no other symptoms. I'm not hurting, no headache, no nothing. I just can't see her. But fortunately, I know a few optometrists. So I called one right away, and I said, "I've got this funny thing. I can't see my wife anymore." He asks me a few questions, and then he said, "Well, here's the story. You're going to lie down for 30 minutes, and when you stand up again, if it's still the same thing, you go straight to emergency. You're having a stroke." So I don't know how many of you knew that you could have a stroke just with the only symptoms being the eyes. I certainly didn't. So I did what he told me. I laid down, and half an hour later, I decided to go to the emergency. So I'm very lucky. I live a 5-minute walk from a very large hospital. And I was also lucky that there was not a long wait list at the ER. Well, I told them what I thought I had, and they were very kind. Within 30 minutes, I was in. So I looked fine, I felt fine, but they took me seriously and they brought me in quickly. After a series of tests, including a CT scan, the doctors confirmed it. I had had a stroke. So a clot had cut the blood flow from my brain, specifically the area responsible for my peripheral vision. So I lost exactly a quarter of my sight, the top left. So you make a circle, exactly a quarter. So you put fingers there, you move them, I don't see them. I see the rest, so it's all good. So I was lucky. The damage was limited to that. I had no other impairment. I had a massive headache after that lasted a few days, but that eventually went away. So they gave me, in the hospital, they gave me blood thinners, a prescription. They sent me home. I was told I'd be contacted by a neurologist for a follow-up eventually. So I walked home alone, and I almost got lost. This was middle of the night. It was about 3 a.m. And because of my sight being a little, I couldn't recognize the street. Anyhow, I made it home. That night taught me a few things, actually many things. In retrospect, it was a godsend. I learned so much about the health system. I learned about certain conditions, and I learned about myself. I was very lucky. I had instant access to an optometrist. Not all of us can do that. Secondly, I live within walking distance to a world-class hospital. I got, well, this is great. I've got a dog on my foot now. No, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Thank you. It feels he's keeping me company. I got excellent care. In the months that followed, I received ultra-specialized care to identify what had caused the clot and to prevent it from happening in the future. So I'm feeling really, really good. But I was also surprised and maybe a little shocked by what was missing. So there was no vision health professional involved in my diagnosis. And I remember when I was there, I was asking the resident, I said, what do you think I have? He said, well, I think you might have retinal detachment. I said, how can I have retinal detachment? It's both eyes, it's right there. If it was retinal detachment, it'd be only one eye. So the guy didn't know, okay. I was not impressed. Anyhow, so the fact that there was no healthcare specialist is something that bugged me. But the fact that after I left, they didn't give me any referrals to, for example, vision therapy, vision rehab, or to see an optometrist was quite shocking. They were happy that I was safe, that I was alive, but in terms of my eyesight, they couldn't care less. I wouldn't say that, but that was not a priority. So they had to move to their next patient. It's strange to me because I think if I had lost the ability to speak or walk, they would have referred me to a speech therapist or a physiotherapist. But for vision loss, they gave me nothing. So fortunately, I knew the system. I had contacts. So I was able to get an appointment with an optometrist the very next day. I got a scan, and they confirmed that, yep, this is all dark here, you're not seeing anything there. I also contacted Vision Loss Rehab, and in a matter of a few weeks, I received the accommodation strategy so that I can use my phone, I can use a computer. Within a week of my stroke, I started vision therapy with Dr. Corriveau, who will be here this evening. And thanks to that support network, I learned to adapt my devices, regained some of my lost vision, and was able to continue working in my professional role without missing a beat. I reduced my hours a little bit, but I kept working. But what if I hadn't known where to turn? So that's why Bill C-284 matters so much. It's designed to address exactly these kinds of gaps and many more. How do we make sure people understand the importance of regular eye exams? How do we educate the public about conditions that can cause blindness? How do we ensure health professionals know how, when, and how to refer patients for vision care and rehabilitation? These are the questions at the heart of Bill C-284, introduced by the Honorable Judy Sgro. The bill received royal assent, that means it was endorsed by all levels of government, on November 7th of last year. And it lays the foundation for a national strategy that will bring more coordination, more awareness, and more access to vision care and rehabilitation across the country. So right now, Health Canada is preparing to launch consultations with Canadians to help shape this strategy. Our coalition, which includes many people in the room here, the Canadian Council of the Blind, the CNIB, Opticians of Canada, the Canadian Association of Optometrists, the Canadian Ophthalmological Society, Diabetes Canada, and Vision Loss Rehab Canada. I hope I didn't forget anyone. I'm sorry. I might have. That coalition is working really hard to develop a strong set of recommendations on behalf of all of you. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. There'll be no other time when the federal government makes vision care such an important priority for them. So it's an opportunity to make vision care a national priority, and I believe we're ready for that. So thank you again to the Canadian Council of the Blind for organizing this conference. Optometrists across Canada are proud to stand with you and with the broader vision care and rehabilitation community as we advocate for meaningful and lasting change. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francois. So we're fortunate to have 4 wonderful panelists with us today to discuss building bridges and strengthening social supports for people with vision loss. Our panelists are Louise Gillis, past president of the Canadian Council of the Blind, Jade Orndick, specialist, CNIB Guide Dogs and media officer for IBSA Goalball, Richard Marcellet, I hope I said that right, Richard. Perfect. Thank you. Former vision loss rehab specialist and president of Achilles Canada, and Christina Lopes, RRSW program coordinator and community engagement specialist for Balance for Blind Adults. Over to my left is Amanda Loy. Amanda is CCB's manager of the Mobile Eye Clinic, and she will be monitoring and reading off any online questions that we receive for our panelists. So I'm going to just first start off by asking each of our panelists to take a few minutes to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about their organization and the supports that are offered. Afterwards, we will have a question and answer period as well. So I'm just going to start with, on the far side, with Louise. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Leslie. Welcome, everyone, to this very informative meeting. And how is everybody feeling about the conference so far? We have some difficult and hard cases to follow because they did wonderful presentations in my mind. And as Leslie said, I'm the immediate past president of the Canadian Council of the Blind, and I lost the majority of my sight in 1996. Initially, I lost the sight in my left eye, and very sudden, as I was driving my car, actually, going to work on the night shift. Fortunately, I was quite aware of the road the street I was on, and was able to know that there was room to pull over and stop the cars, which I did do. At that time, both eyes were completely gone. So this is well before cell time. What do you do? So I sat on the side of the road there for a bit until the right eye kind of cleared, but the left eye never did. So I said, well, I'm going to work, so I might as well continue. I could see with one eye, and then made it to the hospital and went in. And went to outpatients immediately, or emergency, to see a doctor, and it was a GP. And he said, well, yeah, there's something wrong there. I don't know what it is, but we'll just go back to work, and it could be an acute iritis, or it could be acute glaucoma. I don't know. I can't tell. Go to work and work for the evening and see what happens in the morning. So anyway, of course, the people I was working with were very great staff, so I had the lighter load that evening, or that night, and continued until the morning. So I saw another GP in the morning, and again they said, well, I don't know what it is. Maybe you should go to an ophthalmologist. So they did send me to an ophthalmologist, and that ophthalmologist said, well, you lost most of the sight in that eye, there's nothing more we can do for it. So just continue on with life. So years back, many years, when I was 2 years old, I had polio, and all that time through life, I had to fight for myself, to do things. My family was very supportive, but people said, well, you can't do this, and you can't do that, and you can't do the other thing. And I was also told that I could never be a nurse, but I said, I'm going to be a nurse. So I did do that. So I knew that there was more out there in the world, I just had to find it. And what I did do was I got to my family physician like 2 days later, and when she looked in my eye, she almost fainted to see what was there. So she sent me off to more experienced ophthalmologists, and I did get some care. But at that time, there was no treatment for it because there's a central retinal vein occlusion, and they had no treatments. So I just had to live with it, but I was off work and first fell, and then the blood started absorbing, and I got some sight back in that eye, but very, very little. So through time, I learned to adjust to the one eye system of working. And then As time went on, like the next 10 years or so, I started developing glaucoma, which was a familial thing, and started losing some peripheral vision in both eyes, but just continued with medication and eye surgery for that, and different drops and whatever was on the go, laser, and saw many specialists, not only in my own area, but went to more major areas to see something. And they said, well, it's never going to happen again. Well, 20 years almost to the date, it happened again in 1996, but this time in my right eye, which took the majority of my sight. And glaucoma was even more established after that because there was damage to the optic nerve because my pressure raised to about 65. That's the part that I was told, but I know the pain that it was even more than that. Anyway, so to carry on, I said, well, I can't go back to work like this. Who wants a blind nurse coming to care for them, give them needles or whatever, pills? They're not going to be very receptive to that. There was no time either. At that time, there was nothing prepared for somebody with sight loss in the medical community. So I was kind of lost, as I say, what to do, where do I go? I did make several attempts to go to CNIB, but it's difficult to accept the fact of what is happening. So finally, after some time, I did go. I think it's on the 6th try, and I saw somebody there. But they, at that point, referred me to a friend who also was a nurse and had lost her sight. So for that point, I got to know her and got to know what CCB is all about. So I said, okay, pulled up my socks and said, let's get going, get out of this hole and start doing something. So that's where I became a member at the local level, and my friend, who's probably watching this on Zoom right now, said, well, the provincial CCB is not doing very well, we have to do something. We'll do it together, she said. I said, yeah, okay, we'll work together on this. And we did that, and we got the Nova Scotia division up and running, which meant that then we were going to have a representative to the national level. Well, both of us had never done anything like this before in life, so what are we going to do now? So anyways, we'll do it together, both at both levels. And that's what we did. We went to the first national board meeting as a representatives for Nova Scotia, and we continued through that, and okay, well, this is something, we're moving forward. And then she said, will you take over the national level and I'll do the provincial. So we did that, and I got on the board, and as history says, I became the president in 2010 and stepped back in 2021 because I thought it was time for somebody else to come in, and guess what's happened. So during my time there, I certainly did realize that there is life after sight loss, because one of the big things that CCB has done for me and for many others is getting together and see the other side of the story besides the medical side. But also, the medical side was not very well established in CCB at the time. And
Louise,
with
just
my
one more
medical
minute.
knowledge, we thought it's time to get that moving forward so that we can help in the prevention of blindness. So working with ophthalmologists and optometrists and all the eye care people, as well as the pharma part of life, working with them more on, rather just on a sponsorship, but also helping with advisory panels and those types of things. So I did become involved with that over the national and international levels and continue to do that work. So I also got more involved with accessibility in many ways, CTA and other forms of accessibility in the national level as well as the provincial and local areas. So with the social support services, there's people out there like the Canadian Council of the Blind. It's a nonprofit organization, and it works, the board is made up of persons who are blind or have low vision, and the president is generally always, there is always somebody who has low vision. That's part of our, low vision or blind, as part of our mandate. Things that we do they're very simple. And it started in 1944 with awareness, mentoring, socializing with sports, advocacy, health promotion, and illness, just to name a few things. We work together as a community of peers, and that community has been mentioned several times this morning, and it's very, very important. Because our vision is awareness, to promote the well-being of those people who are blind or have low vision, and to help them improve in the community by aware in the community at large, to be more aware of what it is like to live with sight loss. In collaboration, working with other groups such as Fighting Blindness Canada, CNIB, VLR, ABC, and Balance for with blindness, and all those other, many of them not mentioning now, that we've worked with to help promote and prevent blindness, but also to give the peer mentoring and the peer support. It's one of the big things that I did mention already about the prevention. It's to prevent others from having to go through what myself and others in this room have gone through in life. So we're working with that. But some of the programs, GTT has been mentioned, and we have heard the good results from that. Sports, and I'll just name a few of them, but some will stand out more than others for me. Rock climbing, crafts and hobbies, sailing, golf, curling, I'll come back to that, goalball, hockey, crafts, peer support, mentoring, book clubs, advocacy, membership, accessibility, and lending library is another important aspect too. And one example of sports is the recent Atlantic Sports and Recreation Weekend. It's the long weekend in May every year that's held in a different city throughout the Atlantic provinces. We get together and do a variety of the sports I've already mentioned, including darts, table bowling, regular bowling, shoot bowling, running races like 60, 100, and 400 meter races, and just so many other different things that take part during that time. But the biggest time with that is the peer mentoring, the socializing, and getting out and to know, because maybe somebody from one place is not aware of what's available. So that's spread through the community as we go to our dance and in our banquets and other things that we do, just telling people what CCB is all about and what is available from other organizations as well as our own. And the second example is the Canadian Vision Impaired Curling Championship, which is held every year, the first full week of February during White Cane Week. And it most frequently was, or always had been held in Ottawa here, and we all came from across Canada. But this past February, we held it in Sydney, Nova Scotia, and we had teams come all across from British Columbia, well, through. Proud to say that our team came second in the game. British Columbia came first. But silver medal is not bad, because we had gold before, and we had bronze a couple of times before, and we had silver once before. So now we're 2 bronze, 2 silver, and 1 gold. So next year, February 2026, we're going to Edmonton to try and get our gold back again. So that's what it's all about. So curling, that's a thing that, well, ice. Who wants to go out on the ice to walk on slippery stuff? We have hard enough time walking on flat ground, non-slippery. But getting people encouraged to go out and do things, let's try it. And the biggest thing that we had there was to convince curling coaches to come and show us what to do and how to do it. But that has happened all across Canada, and Western Canada and Ontario somewhat too have been curling for many, many years, longer than we have, but this championship has been going on for, well, around 20 years.
It's just a 1-minute warning, please. Thank you. Thank you.
So these events are promoting awareness, and they show that their life is after sight loss and our ability to move about independently. It also provides an opportunity for our guide dogs to meet each other, and guide dogs so they can have a bit of social life as well as working. So guide dogs did get together, and they had a great time while we were away too. So we're looking after them too. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you. Sitting beside Louise is Christina. Christina is with Balance.
Hi there. So my name is Christina Lopez. I'm the program coordinator and community engagement service specialist at Balance. For those that don't know, Balance provides customized training to support goals for optimal independence, addressing the needs of the whole person mentally and physically. Our in-person services that are available in Toronto include orientation and mobility, adaptive daily living skills, and community engagement services, providing a variety of in-person recreational groups like boxing, self-defense, and dance, providing instructors and artists with the tools to create an inclusive environment for the blind and partially sighted persons in the mainstream community. Our virtual services have expanded throughout Ontario, where clients can receive remote assistive technology lessons or participate in mental health support groups led by lived experience counselors, with individualized counseling options also provided throughout Ontario. In 2020, Balance developed an assistive technology apprenticeship program aiming to provide real workplace experience to blind and partially sighted individuals with strong computer skills, and are responsible to teach a variety of technology skills to clients of Balance remotely. In 2022, with funding from the United Way Greater Toronto Area, Balance has launched a new pre-employment program developed to not only provide skills and training to blind and partially sighted job seekers, but also to provide training to the employment service providers as well throughout the mainstream community. One thing that we really value at Balance is being responsive, not just to our clients, but also to our partners. When we're running training sessions for employment service providers, a common question came up. Do you have any examples of employment of blind or partially sighted people? With the support of the Enabling Change program, we have developed the Working Blind video series, a 5-part docu-style series of short videos that highlight blind and partially sighted workers thriving across different industries, using a range of accommodations and assistive technologies. These videos are meant to be used in staff training, shared with clients to spark conversations, and shown to employers to help build their confidence and bring accessibility and inclusion to life in real, practical ways.
Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Beside Christina, we have Jade. Go ahead, Jade.
Hi, everyone. So a little bit about myself before I get started into what CNIB is and how I'm here today. So I have albinism, something that I'm born with, and I also have a sibling who has albinism as well. When my sibling and I went to the doctors for the first time to figure out what accommodations we would need, what kind of supports would help us in terms of visually and all those things. My parents had a not so great surprise. My parents were told that my sibling and I, for a reference, my sibling is studying in the UK, doing a law degree and a master's, so doing quite well. And we were told that we would have no friends, we would struggle, wouldn't have any jobs. We would essentially live with our parents for the rest of our lives. And as much as they love us, I don't think that was in their plan. But growing up, the biggest connection I had to the community outside of my sibling was a CNIB card. Outside of that, I didn't have much else. I learned to adapt to what everybody else around me was doing. I got really comfortable with being uncomfortable, and especially in situations where I was with people who had no idea what vision loss was. All they knew was that I was legally blind and couldn't see very well, and that I couldn't see how many fingers they were holding up. And then when I went to W. Ross McDonald after transitioning into grade 9 in my mainstream high school, for reference, I love academics. I've always done really well in school. And so when I was in high school, I had a really hard time. I didn't have the supports and the community that I had before. I was always very lucky to have incredible teachers, as well as a mom and a dad who would fight for me until the end of the world to make sure that I was able to do what everybody else was doing. So I went to W. Ross McDonald halfway through grade 10, and it was an adjustment, but it was one of the best things that has ever happened to me. Through W. Ross McDonald, I was able to be more involved in the music program. I have grown up singing, dancing, acting, doing musical theater and operas and things like that. And I really got to develop more of those skills in piano and theory, although I still took music outside and did theater and things outside of there. Through being at W. Ross McDonald, I met another person who was just like me, who had albinism, a similar experience. I met somebody else who was total. And I had never had that experience before. And I know now it sounds a little silly to me because I work for CNIB and I work with blind people all the time. But until that point, I hadn't met another person. Through being at W. Ross McDonald, I got to meet Monique Pelkington, who is the executive director of Lake Joe. There, she asked me, "Hey, do you have a summer job?" And I said, "No." She said, "Well, if you've never heard of Lake Joe before, I'd invite you to apply online." And about 3 weeks later, I was up at Lake Joe working for my first summer there. I never attended Lake Joe as a kid. If you've never heard of Lake Joe is up on Lake Joseph, so about 2.5 hours out of Toronto, depending on how fast you drive. And I'm not just saying this because I work for CNIB and I have worked for Lake Joe. Lake Joe is incredible, and it was a huge introduction to what I do now and where I know we can go. If you're not familiar with Lake Joe, I encourage you to look it up online. As a brief pitch about what they do, they provide summer camp programs for children, youth, young adults, families, chosen family, friends to come together and experience the magic of camp. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I won't go too much further. And so with doing that, I did that for 2 summers, and then I was looking for a job, and I had some conversations, and I knew I wanted to stay with CNIB. Through Lake Joe and through being at W. Ross, I really learned my passion for just improving what we already have and giving every single person the opportunity that I maybe didn't have, and the fact that I know we can do so much more. So now I work for CNIB Guide Dogs. Through that opportunity, I have not only gotten to learn more about guide dogs and learn more about International Guide Dog Federation and all of those amazing things, but I've gotten to learn more about the community that we're all involved in. Regardless of what organization we work for and who we're most involved in, we all want to do the same thing, which is make people's lives better, point blank, period. And through those things, I've gotten to more recently work with the legal support program and organizing their data. I've gotten to organize some accessibility reports for the Ontario election. And one of the things that I'm really passionate in, and Andrew Gelster, who's in this room as well, and he shares the same passion, is connecting people to other organizations within the community. If you come to us first, we're going to direct you, and you can kind of choose your own journey. And same thing with other resources. Why are we not sharing? However, with saying that, we do a lot at CNIB. I know there are multiple places that do employment services. We have our Come to Work program, though. We have children and youth programs. We have virtual programs. Even if you're not able to be at Lake Joe in the summer, we have virtual programs there as well. And I think one of the things that I really do appreciate most about CNIB and especially with where we're going, is listening to the community suggestions. We have a new strategic plan. If you have not heard, attitudes, big thing, changing those attitudes. How can we change the public, as well as honestly personal perception about blindness? I know growing up when I was younger, I had my own perceptions about myself and where I would be. Transit, huge thing. Making sure that people are able to get around, so accessible journeys. And of course, children will thrive. Our next generation, I don't want another Jade coming in that room and having the parents or support system told by a doctor that they're not going to amount to anything, because every single person has a version of success. Yes, it might look different, and that is okay, but to tell somebody that they're not going to achieve anything or be successful is, I won't say it here, but yeah, so in short, that's what we do at CNIB.
Thank you, Jade. That's wonderful. And our final panelist, not the last or the least.
And I have to introduce my guide dog, Toa, who's phenomenal. Hello, everybody. I am so honored to be here, and I thank the CCB and VLRO for giving me this opportunity. And I will just say, along with Jade, Lake Joe, unbelievable. Wall climbing, mini pod, water skiing. First time I ever got on water skis. Oh my God. And I survived. And so yeah, if you ever get a chance to go, phenomenal place. I highly recommend it. So I'm just going to quickly also tell you about myself, and then I'll go on to tell you about VLRO, where I spent the last 30 years of my career trying to make a difference for people who are blind or partially sighted. So I'm so excited to share that with you. So myself, I have retinitis pigmentosa, and I was born with that. And currently I have a little bit of light perception. I kind of have to look around and I go, oh, I see the light. Hey, I saw the light. Woohoo! and growing up, my parents had no clue. Doctors really didn't say much. Back in the days, that I'm so old, back in the 60s, yeah. So they really didn't know, which was a blessing for me, because it was just like, they treated me like all my relatives, my cousins. Get out there and play. You fall down, pick yourself back up, and that was a blessing. I didn't know that at the time, but now I do. And so I went through school. I had Coke bottle glasses, like I'm sure some of you've seen or remember. And so I had to wear those, and when people weren't looking, I'd take them off and hide them. And, I played every sport that I could. I played softball, because my family, I always say, it was more about the bronze and not so much about the brains, but, hey, you can't get everything. But so I played a lot of sports, and not really knowing my vision, I knew something was different, but I really didn't know what that meant. And so I started off, I played softball, and I stopped when I started getting the ball in the head. I went, maybe I should move on. This might be a little dangerous to my health. So I moved on to something safer like bowling, and I was on the national bowling team, and then I got involved in soccer, and then I found running and cycling. I did every marathon that you could do on a bike, and I just kept on going and going, and I worked in the travel industry. And I worked in social work. And, a lot of times growing up, people would say, even in my own family, go to college, go to university like him, and you'll know nothing. He's not going to go anywhere. And, like Jade said, when you hear these kind of things, you're pretty devastated. And it takes a lot to build your confidence back up and break down the barriers. And so when I was 30, I found the CNIB, or now VLRO, and there was an RP support group, and that's the first time I met somebody like myself, and it was amazing. We supported each other, we built on each other's strengths and weaknesses, we helped each other break down barriers. I learned all about my vision from the staff. It was just incredible. And then at 30, I had a major vision drop, and that's when my rehab specialist, or independent living skills specialist in Cornwall, said, you'd make an amazing rehab specialist. I really want you to look at the rehab program. And that's when I did. And nothing. My life has been so different ever since, and so incredible. And since then, through my sports, I've been on the national tandem cycling team for 7 years. I've got a brown belt, which is just below the black belt in martial arts. I've done the 6 major marathons around the world. My goal next year is to climb Kilimanjaro. And I'm not telling you to say, oh, wow, look at him. What I'm trying to show you is, as a person who's blind or partially sighted, we really can live a full life. It's what we choose. Yes, we have the disability, society provides us the handicap, but we have the choice, and we can have the right attitude. We talk a lot about attitude, but we need to have the right attitude ourselves. And let me tell you, when I get something in my mind, you better stand back because I might take you out. So just get out there, live life. Okay, now, why I'm really here. Vision Loss Rehab Ontario, or Vision Loss Rehab Canada, we're an essential service funded by Ministry of Health. So each province is a little different and little services are different. But what we do in Ottawa here is we start off with our triage workers. So when we get referrals, which can be from the clients, their families, ophthalmologists, optometrists, the community, hospitals, everywhere. And so they start up a file for the client. Then they go on to the client care navigator, and I hope no titles have changed, client care navigator. And what they do is, one of their main jobs is to reach out to you as a client and say, how can we help you? Where are you struggling? What are your priorities? Is there any safety issues that we should know about? And then they go from there. And then part of their job also is, as we're talking about community, they refer people to, let's say, Meals on Wheels, stroke care, whatever may be out there, CCB, CNIB programs. There's so many services out there that we can help them provide or guide them towards and connect them with. And also from there, they will refer to the professionals. And we have 4 different services. First, we have the orientation and mobility. So they help you to get from A to B and help you with, so orientation is kind of, where are you in space? Do you know your timing? Do you know exactly where you are? How do you use your landmarks? And then the mobility, of course, is using the cane, or using your residual vision. Not everybody is at the point, when I was first losing my vision, I didn't need a cane. Or so I thought I didn't, until I fell into enough holes, ran into enough poles, and then I went, maybe I should take out that cane I've been carrying in my knapsack for 2 years now. And so they teach you that. They teach you how to be safe, independent, and build your confidence so that you can be an integrated part of society, in employment, in your community, in advocacy, whatever it is you want to do. Then we have our low vision specialists. They work with your remaining vision, or what we say residual vision. So they work with that, teach you how to use that vision through, whether it's magnifiers like a closed circuit television, or a portable video magnifier, or a handheld magnifier, or some different other non-aids, non-optical aids. They even, overlap some of the services so they can help you to increase the font on your iPads, things like that. So there's so much that they can do. And, 2 of the main things that our clients say is their struggle is driving and reading. So many people want to be able to still read. And so the low vision really help when you have some vision. Obviously, when you have no vision, we look at CELA Library and, all the talking books programs out there. So that's what they do. And then we go on to ILS, or I almost forgot my own department, or we say independent living skills, or vision rehabilitation specialist or therapist. And we basically cover A to Z, except for O&M, as we say. So we sort of have 4 areas. And so we do home management, anything within the home, cooking, cleaning, bathing, safety. We work a lot with occupational therapists, making sure that there's safety. We might look at safety in the home, like loose carpets. We don't want you to trip and fall, because that's one of the big issues. Could be threading a needle, pouring liquids. So whatever you need to be independent in your home. And again, we say independent, but what is that? It's whatever works for you. I prefer to say interdependent because, we're taught so much. You must be independent. Well, it's so wrong. Yes, we have to be independent, but we all need help. Even if you're sighted, if you got to take your car to get fixed on mechanics, you need your plumbing, electricity, we all need help. And so please, let's focus on interdependence. That's what community is all about. So that's one of the things. We also do personal management, which might be shaving, medication, clothes identification. There's so much. We also look at communication. So using your technology, your iPhone, your Android phone, using a bank machine, using
Richard,
point of
just
sale.
one more minute.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Point of sale. Then we have our high tech who comes in and will do computer assessments, whether you need like Zoom text, a large print program, or you need a screen reader, or you need a large print monitor, or a large print monitor, or you need a braille display. So you'll come in and have an assessment through them. And through the Ministry of Health, there's also the Assistive Devices program. So if you qualify, there is some partial funding for some of the equipment. So those are our main services. Also, we do employment assessments. All of our staff will go in and do assessments like that. We work within the community. We do work within the clients' homes. We work in the hospitals. We do retirement homes, nursing. We're pretty much out there. All through COVID, we were out there where we could really help. So our main goal is to give timely service at the right time and the right service to really increase your independence, your confidence, and just your safety. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. And just so our audience knows, when Amanda and I had a Zoom call with our panelists, we realized then we had a very enthusiastic group, which was wonderful. And it was all agreed by everyone that if needed, we would do a verbal 1-minute notice. So if you hear that, that's why. Everyone's agreed to it. It's okay. And everyone's voices are very important. But Amanda's already told me that we have quite a few questions coming online. So let's get started with those. I'm going to start off myself with one question for our panelists, and then Amanda will read out some that are coming through online. If anybody in our audience here would like to ask a question as well, again, just put your hand up and somebody will come to you with a mic as well. So my question, and I'm just going to ask Jade to start off on this one, is how are your organization's social community or peer services perceived? And that could be a choice of perceived by the vision loss community or perceived by the sighted community.
Amazing, thank you. So, love this question. So I do think it depends on, quite frankly, where that person is situated geographically, as well as sometimes maybe around their age. I know we have done a lot of work in recent years with addressing the gaps and making sure that we are doing referrals and making sure that everybody has the tools needed to succeed. I do know that there are potentially some ruffled feathers when it does come to our organization. And I do know that we are working extremely hard to fix those barriers, especially with the young adult age range. I know in the past, mainly from being at Lake Joe, as well as being at the W. Ross reunions, where I gotten to connect with some folks that may be a little bit older than I am. And their perception of what CNIB was a huge community. And I think it's somewhere along the line we did lose that. And I do know from personal perceptions from, some of my friends and community members I'm involved with, they're a little bit hesitant to reach out. But I do think that CNIB is working extremely hard with that feedback and with that in mind as well. And that is something that I've brought forward of, I know that that's your experience, but, they're working really hard. And so I do think there is, some perception of what we do and what we have done in the past. But I know with the programming and with the fact that we are moving forward and addressing a lot of those major things with this new strategic plan, transit, attitude, children, all of those things are getting addressed. Those are the major things that have come up in the community consultations that we did. I believe we did roughly 10,000 of them. And so from what I've seen, they see the action. And so I think there is a lot of curiosity in terms of the perception within the community that we serve.
Thank you. Louise, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, it's a very good question as well. I think our organization is perceived as many people, because it's off the blind, that we're blind people just getting together for, just to get together for whatever reason. But it's for more than that, and it's to get that information and knowledge out to people to understand that we can do much more than that. Because many people perceive a blind person as not able to continue in school or ever be in school or get an education of any sort to be able to do any work. So because we're often blind, it feels, most people or a lot of people feel that it's the people that have not succeeded that just come to this organization. But if you look around us and see and listen to what has been said this morning, that we're perceived a bit better than that, because with the social supports and the peer mentoring through our GTT in particular that we've mentioned, and our other sports programs, that's very important, and people are seeing a better eye in this now. And also with the work we do with the accessibility things, the Accessible Canada Act, just recently the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act, and the Goods and Service Accessibility Advisory Boards, and with pharma, and many of those people are beginning to realize that CCB is more than what a bunch of people that can't see sitting around doing nothing.
Thank you. Christina?
So I think for a lot of people out in the community, recognizing that right now we're hosting our in-person groups at a shared community center, and it does have a lot of busy traffic coming through of people with various disabilities or not with disabilities, also looking for their own social supports. And seeing our groups being hosted in the moment, seeing our self-defense group, people rolling around on the floor, kind of, really going at it, or our boxing group and just punching bags, it's changing their perspective of the sight loss community, opening up to them that, you can make anything really accessible. You just have to make a few tweaks to make the opportunities and possibilities open for all. And then to address, our clients' perspectives of our services, something Richard had said about hesitation of taking out his white cane, we do see that a lot. And so I think in being able to provide these mental health supports, it's providing a greater opportunity for people to meet those levels mentally first before we go at the physical opportunities and skills.
Thank you. And I like how you said making opportunities available. I think that's key to a lot of things as well. Thanks. Richard.
Okay. I think perceptions is a very tricky topic in the sense that there's such a spectrum. In my 30 years, I've heard it all. I've heard we're great, we're awesome, we suck, we're not so good, you don't provide enough service, we wait too long. So, it really is where the person's at in their life, where they are in their adjustment to blindness, where their family's at. Are we doing enough for those clients? Do the families think we are providing enough support at a timely fashion? I mean, we only have so many staff, and we have a lot more clients than we have staff, especially with our aging population. So we can't always be there immediately. They might have to wait a month or two, and that's reality, right? So I think for the clients, I can speak from my perception or from my experience, I've had a lot of clients that have come back to me and said, wow, you've changed my life. CNIB, VLRO, you've changed my life. And that was just by, you gave us a magnifier. I can read again. Wow, you put a bump dot on 350. I can cook again. I don't have to burn all my food, You gave me some, you told me about wearing my oven mitts, or you gave me a cane. I could get out into society. I could get out there. I could walk again. I could be independent. I didn't have to wait for my family to come and drive me around. Because we all know as blind and visually impaired persons that our life sometimes seems to be ever dependent on people showing up and taking us somewhere or guiding us or whatever. But when we get that cane and we can be independent, oh my God, you know? So perception is a tricky thing. But I think overall, VLRO, you know, we have a good reputation especially from the clients who've really benefit from us. For the clients that, you know, that we maybe don't provide the right service or our services aren't something that meets them and we need to refer them on, maybe it's, you know, that's not quite the right service. But there's so many perception, I think overall, you know, it's important that we share and tell the clients, be upfront with them saying, we only have this much time, we'll do the best we can, even if it's just, while they're waiting, just to connect them with the right service through the CCN. But, you know, also it's part of us as clients, we have to have the right attitude. And we'll talk about that later. But if we don't have the right attitude, nobody's going to have the right attitude. Everybody's going to not be helpful. Nobody's going to be doing the right thing, and nobody's going to serve me right. So it's attitude and perception by everyone.
Thank you. That's so true. And Amanda.
I'm over here now.
Where are you?
I've teleported back here.
Okay.
Yes, I have lots of questions coming in online. I'll start with the first one. So this is from Anonymous. My niece has Stargardt disease, just finished college. How does one even start to look for work when you can't drive, no public transportation due to extreme fatigue issues related to low vision, and can only work part-time? Any advice on navigating the workforce journey? Thank you. I think maybe Jade, since you're close to your university years, if you want to take a shot at this one.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's a really great question. I mean, I have so many questions for that person, and I know it's a one-way street right now. So I think one of the first things to really think about is, you know, adjustment to vision loss, which is something that was mentioned earlier, and I know something that we were going to be bringing back some peer-to-peer support as well. You know, I know with Stargardts, I know some friends who have that as well. It can vary from person to person in terms of what you know is able to be achieved in terms of, you know, maybe working in a grocery store might be possible. I used to stock shelves in a grocery store when I was younger. Wasn't the best at it, but they were really great. And bringing forth towards those employability skills as well, you know, just checking resume, things like that, and really just gaining that confidence. I think it's a great place to start in terms of peer support, getting to have conversations with people that are, you know, relatively just like you, and getting to have some of those conversations and connections, because some of the best things that I've learned about accessibility and adapting to different situations are from people who are a part of our community. And really getting to have those conversations in terms of, okay, I'm in this situation right now, and what did you do when you were in this situation? So I think that's the biggest thing that I would suggest. And then even being able to have conversations, if you have a corner store, going up and saying, hey, I would be able to do X, Y, and Z. Are you looking for somebody to be able to do that? Whatever you want to do, I promise you, you can do it. So whether it's reaching out to VLRC and, you know, working on those O&M skills, or getting some employability skills as well, it can happen. It's just going to be a path there. So hope that answers the question.
Can I just add a bit to that?
Yes, please.
So again, as we know, it's all about communities. So there are Stargardt communities out there you can reach out to, at least get that initial support. As Jade said, there's the VLRO, our independent livings, O&M, high tech. It's so important as a person with a disability. If you're seeking employment, you gotta know your skills. You have to. There is no way you're gonna get a job if you don't know your O&M, your ILS, your technology. A lot of people won't even look at you. You gotta know your skills. And before you can get a job, take the time to figure out what skills you have and what are your strengths and what areas you need to work on, and reach out to VLRO. There's the CNIB Come to Work program. There's programs with high tech as well with the CCB. There's CNIB programs. There's so many programs, and there's a lot of virtual CNIB has, like, at the Prime, we had over 5,000 people every month on virtual programs from all kinds of programs. So there is all kinds of programs out there. You just got to reach out, make that initial contact, and then they can help you to move on. But believe in yourself and get those skills.
Thank you. Do we have another question, Amanda?
Hello. My name is Alex Jurgensen, here representing the Canadian Organization of the Blind and Deafblind. My question is, building on some things that both Jade and Richard touched on. Our organization works in rehabilitation, has a summer camp as well, and just looking towards like where there's a lot of synergy. And my question has to do with what do you see the future of inter-organization collaboration looking like? I know Richard mentioned, referrals being done inter-organizationally, but just wondering, as a question to the panel, what does it mean to either you or your organization? What does that look like going forward as we build these bridges? Thank you.
I'll take that one if you're okay.
Sure, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, I remember 30 years ago when I first started, let me just say there wasn't a lot of interaction between the organizations. I'd say CNIB, CCB, ABC, yeah, we didn't even really talk much together. I think there was a lot of animosity. There was not a good history. But I can say in the last 5-10 years, wow, unbelievable the change. We work together all the time. I know it's VLRO and CNIB. I've made a lot of referrals to CCB. Likewise, Shelley Morris and I are the best friends. And we do so much together. And ABC, CCB, there's so many organizations. The City of Ottawa, I was on the accessibility committee for 10 years with God, I'm losing it. The Ottawa Hospital. I mean, so many sports groups, like we all talk together, we all know each other. The blind community, before I think we struggled. I always was so impressed with people in wheelchairs. They always had such strong programs and really were such strong advocates. And I felt we were out there kind of fighting against each other. But I don't see that anymore. I see us working together with great conferences like this, the CNIB Braille Conference. There's so many out there. And in sports, you've got our downhill skiing, we've got our blind running, we've got curling. We've got so many programs I used to do through CCB and VLRO. I did a dance program. It is out there. We are moving forward, leaps and bounds. And I hope we all keep continuing because we've done all the organizations have done so well. And also, I think it's been a demand by the blind and visually impaired or partially sighted community ourselves. We're speaking out. We're taking back our rights and saying, no, this is not acceptable. We want accessibility. We want to be included. So stand out of our way because this is what we want and we're demanding it, but in a positive way. And I think that's where the future is. And that's where we are now.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I have another question online here. This one is actually directed to Christina. So the question is from Anonymous. If I want to join the Sharing Space support group at Balance and I don't know how to use Zoom, how can I participate? Also, if I want to receive assistive technology training remotely and I live in a small community in Eastern Ontario, how can I access your services and what would be my first step? That's like 3 questions, so let me know if you wanted me to repeat it.
Thank you. So the first question was with regards to joining Sharing Space support group. So while it is held on Zoom, we do have a call-out feature. So all it would require is for you to phone our office, let them know that you're interested in registering for the next cohort, and we would be able to call you out during every session. With regards to, what was the other question?
What was the rest? What was
assistive technology services in remote areas. You would just have to call our office, and we would provide you with an intake to complete. Once that's out of the way, we match you with the best instructor for assistive technology or apprentice who can then start working with you one-to-one. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any questions in person here? No? Okay, I will move quickly. I know we're coming close to 2 o'clock already, so I'll answer one more question. If anyone has any other questions, please email us, again at ccb@ccbnational.net, and I can forward it to our panelists. And this question would be, very briefly, what would each of the panelists say your organization does to make social inclusion happen? We'll try to make it really brief.
Louise, would you like to start that one?
Social inclusion is done by getting to know who the people are out in society, and we need to get more referrals come to us, for sure, for CNIB, VLR. Let us know so we can get out and talk to the people. We have newsletters that go out once a month, once you're a member of CCB. We have different programs in the communities, and you can take part in any of these sports that I mentioned beforehand, but the technology thing with GTT is open to people across Canada, so just get in touch with ccbnational.net and we'll give you all the updates on that there. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina?
I feel that by providing training to our instructors and artists who we've developed in-person groups with, and some remote groups as well, that they are then able to really kind of take that experience out into the community, making it sure that if any person wanted to join their group who is blind or partially sighted, they then know how to provide that service to them. So I think that's been making a real change. And I also want to say that the benefit of bringing on students into your organization, that person is going to go somewhere that's not necessarily sight loss focused, and giving them that opportunity to have this experience with any one of our organizations is preparing them for when somebody comes into that doctor's office, that rehabilitation center, wherever they're working in their future, they now know how to provide services to a person with sight loss and making sure that they feel that they're being heard and looked after accordingly.
Jade, go right ahead.
I think one thing we do really well is getting the point across that what my accommodations are is not the same as the next person, even though we might have the same condition, we might have a different condition. And I think one thing that's really great when working in the field that we do, so, you know, whether it's people that are blind, deafblind, or who have low vision, is it's often a lot of transferable skills that can be transferred to interacting with people from all walks of life. And so I think we are really great at meeting people where they're at, whether it's our own colleagues, our clients, as well as, you know, the clients' families. And I think we are really lucky to have amazing family supports. I know there's one parent in particular who mentioned to me, it would be really great if you connected with organizations or were able to connect with organizations. So, you know, for example, if someone loses their vision because of cancer, I know there's a lot of groups there that are more than happy to make accommodations. And why not? Why not get involved in those groups? Why not get in karate or in horseback riding? And so I think we do a lot with meeting people where they're at, but we're also really, really, really fortunate to have parents, clients, colleagues, donors, volunteers that champion for us and really make our organization what it is, which is, you know, we do provide services, programs, all these amazing things, mobile eye clinics, and we go everywhere, but it's just one big community trying to accomplish one thing, and it goes beyond organization, and that's why we're here today. So I think we do that part really well.
Thank you, Jade. Richard.
Wow, that was good, Jade. I think she stole half my answer, though. Wow, where do I go with this one? I think, social inclusion for VLRO, just through our professionals, how we give persons who are blind or partially sighted the skills that they need to develop their confidence, their level of advocacy, their skill set to get out there and to become integrated into the community in whichever way that may be, whether it may be through play, through work, through advocacy, whichever. I think that's one of the biggest areas how we help. And again, like Jade said, meeting people where they're at that time, because nobody is going to go through rehab unless they're ready. So when they're ready, then we want to make sure we're there with all the resources that we need. And I have to say, not just VLRO Ontario, but all of Vision Loss Canada, and with all the work that Lisa Terrell, our executive director, and Jennifer Urosevich, our CEO, they have done so much work on building community. Again, making connections with CCB, AB, through our library, through the optometrist, through all the different, through the City of Ottawa. I've done so much over my 30 years with advocacy, with the train station, with the airports, with so many organizations trying to get audible announcements in and everything. So all the great work that they do to break down barriers, which we people have touched on in different ways today, but it's all about breaking down barriers so we can be included in an equal way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Building community is huge, and that's really why we're here today. We often talk about just a sighted community, or we talk about a non-sighted community, but really we're just one community. And working together, building together is, I think, the way to go. So thank you very much to our panelists for giving us your experiences, your stories, and telling us about your organizations. Thank you. You can just stay right there, guys. So we're almost at a close for our afternoon session. So hearing firsthand accounts from individuals with vision loss provides valuable insight into the real impact of available supports, their strengths, their gaps, and the ways in which they shape daily lives. Their stories serve as powerful reminders that accessibility and inclusion are not just concepts, but necessities that define independence and opportunity. As we reflect on what has been shared, let us carry forward a commitment to listening, learning, and advocating for meaningful improvements in support systems. Progress comes not only through policies and programs, but through the recognition that every individual deserves dignity, autonomy, and the right to thrive. To those who shared their experiences, thank you. Your voices matter, and your perspectives help pave the way for a more inclusive future. Let's continue striving toward a world where support is not just available, but effective, equitable, and empowering. Before we wrap up, I'd love for everyone to take a moment and think about one concrete action you can take to bring more community, social inclusion, or peer support into your world. Whether it's in your healthcare setting, your nonprofit, or charitable work, or even in your personal life. Thank you, everyone online, for attending our conference, and thank you to everyone who has joined us here today. I hope you all enjoyed our speakers, and I hope each of us walk away with one action we're excited to try. For those of you returning tonight, that evening begins at 5 o'clock. I'd also like to give a shout out to the CCB staff who've been working diligently for months now behind the scenes to put our conference together. Thank you very, very much. And thank you everyone for coming, and thank you everyone for attending our conference virtually. Thank you.